With the new Red Sonja movie starring Matilda Lutz set to release on August 15th, 2025, we thought this is the perfect time to explore the Dynamite version of Red Sonja, which is the comic inspiration behind the movie. So, let's explore the 2019 run of this absolutely thrilling and exciting warrior woman as she journeys through and fights back against her haunting memories as well as vicious enemies. I'll keep the intro short. Let's begin. Introducing Queen Sonja. We start the story at the Gate of Woe, located in the city of Shadinar, the capital of the Zamoran Empire. A messenger reads out the fate of several captives, starting with the confirmation about the fall of Stygia, their kingdom. He points to their fate being in the hands of their new emperor Dragon, and warns them to rejoice at his wrath as well as tremble at his mercy. A man, while waiting for his turn to meet the new emperor, discusses with his fellow captives that he believes Dragon to be just and fair, for a man of his power wouldn't have come so far being an unjust ruler. But as he finished his sentence, the man noticed the previous captive beheaded, but he still hoped that Dragon wouldn't be some kind of a monster. Presented in front of Dragon, this man is revealed to be none other than the former king of Stygia. Dragon immediately mocks the former king for his appearance, as well as accusing him of an attempted assassination of Dragon, the magnificent emperor of Zamora, ruler of kings, and the divinely ordained master of the world. The former king pleads in front of Dragon that he never actually posed any threat to his life. It is then that Dragon revealed that when ordered earlier, the former king of Stygia had refused to surrender to the Zamoran Empire, but what he didn't know back then was Dragon had been prophesied to die the day he failed to extend his empire, which in turn meant that by refusing to surrender, the former king had actually tried to kill Emperor Dragon. For this reason, the former king of Stygia is sentenced to be sealed inside a sack filled with 20 scorpions, 10 starving rats, and a goat. The former king of Stygia still continues to plead to Dragon, revealing that his 20 years of experience as a king must be of some use to Dragon. These words seemingly convince Dragon to reconsider his punishment. Dragon asks the former king for advice regarding his next conquest, which will be Hyrcania. The former king quickly advises Dragon that conquering Hyrcania will be an easy endeavor, as the people there live in huts of felt and grass. The people there are so backwards that they lack even metal pots to cook meat, and end up using the animal's leather to help it cook. But despite the high chances of winning, the people lack any resources which could be of use for the Zamoran Empire, making it a huge gamble in case of losing. Thanking the former king for his wise advice, Dragon proclaims him to be useless and sentences him to the same punishment of being put in a sack, revealing that the former king's thinking is like that of a king, which can be a threat to Dragon, an emperor. As the former king of Stygia gets taken away by the guards, Dragon orders his advisor to send a message of surrender to the ruler of Hyrcania in case the people wish to live. Meanwhile, towards the east of Hyrcania, Sonja the Red roams around the wasteland on the back of her horse. Noticing her horse's lack of strength, she realizes that it is nearing death. This makes Sonja realize that this had been the fate for anyone she has ever cared for, even for Domo, the great war master of Kitai, as well as the greatest teacher she ever had. Sonja remembers that Domo didn't just teach her to fight. She had known that since she was a little girl, but rather Domo taught her how to move in a calculating manner. Standing in front of the corpse of her horse, she reminisces about this one time out of many when she was playing a game of chess with Domo. Losing in that game, like every other time, Sonja requested Domo to let her win against him at least once. But instead, Domo pointed out to Sonja that actually she was the winner in the game every time, because she got to learn something new in all of their games, unlike Domo, who learnt nothing from Sonja. Sonja remembers that Domo was like a father to her, or at least what she thought a father would have been. Remembering Domo's teachings, she was taught that a soldier tends to be in the best form, not when they are fighting for something, but for someone. But she couldn't stop feeling hopeless about having no one to fight for anymore. Oh, and before I continue, if you like the video, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these marvelous long reads. Meanwhile, as Sonja processes her grief, a group of men notice Sonja's dead horse. One of them hopes for the horse to possess some valuables which he could possibly steal, but before he is able to get close to the carcass, Sonja attacks him with her sword, stabbing him in the neck and killing him. As she walks towards the bandit's horse to use it for escape, she remembers another one of Domo's teachings. She remembers that one doesn't win battles against their enemy just by strength, because there will always be someone stronger. One also doesn't win battles by being ruthless, because sometimes that makes the enemy all the more determined to make you lose, but rather you win by being present where they don't want you to be present. As Sonia gets on the dead man's horse, she's quickly discovered by the other two men who follow her. Her horse being shot by an arrow throws her on the land, forcing her to face the men head-on. Beheading one with her sword, Sonia uses his head to attack the other, throwing him off and finishing him too with her sword. With two more men coming her way, she believes it to be her end, only for those two to be killed by a storm of arrows. As she stands in confusion, two men arrive and call her out by her name, requesting her to visit Hyrcania's Council of Elders. Soon reaching the council at night, Sonia is welcomed back to her birthplace by them. They reminisce about hearing her legends, which gave her various names like Sonia, the warrior, Sonia, Death's beloved, and Sonia, acolyte of the legendary Domo of Kitai. But feeling ashamed of her latest escape from Kitai due to its downfall and the death of her close friend Domo, she feels undeserving of heroic legends written about her. The Council of Elders persuade her to not dwell in the past, but rather to accept her new fate and opportunities laying ahead of her. With all the elders giving a consensus, Sonia the Red is elected to become the new queen of Hyrcania, although Sonia herself remains baffled by the situation. Giving the reins to Sonia, the Council of Elders take their lead, revealing it to be a sick plan as they make their escape from Hyrcania. With no time given to rest, Sonia immediately gets called to meet the diplomat visiting on behalf of Emperor Dragan. Although losing patience with the diplomat's reading, Sonia takes the scroll and reads it by herself. The scroll reveals the many benefits if Sonia agrees to surrender to the Zamoran Empire. Benefits like the Kingdom of Hyrcania being added to the trade routes for silk caravans, the ruler getting to live a lavish lifestyle, and people getting to learn from teachers to dress, speak, and act like a true Zamoran. Although the benefits come with a catch, as the nobles' and rulers' children will be taken as hostages by the Zamoran Empire to prevent any chances of a revolt. Dragan also ordered for 20,000 low-born to be given as tribute to serve in the Zamoran army and to help out in religious services. Left in utter confusion, Sonia questions her cupbearer, Hannah, why she was chosen to be in charge of Hyrcania, the land where her family was slaughtered, leaving her with no relatives. But Hannah revealed that the raiders who had killed Sonia's family had taken hostages, and one boy had managed to escape from their hand, the boy being Sonia's cousin Cryon. Hannah further points out that should Sonia agree to the surrender, then Cryon will become one of the many who will be sent to the Zamoran Empire. Hannah further revealed being a former hostage of the Zamoran Empire, attesting to the fact that sometimes those who they take in as hostages may never return in the future, and even if they do, they become broken. Hearing this, Sonia quickly decides to write her reply to Dragan. Later in Shadinar, in the royal court, Dragan is presented with Sonia's reply along with a skull. Sonia started the letter, agreeing that Hyrcania was undeserving of the riches offered by the Zamoran Empire, but she also went on to add that Hyrcanians would make horrible slaves, as they are stubborn, untrustworthy, and finally poor people. She still offered to give whatever Hyrcania was capable of offering to Dragan, with the skull revealing to have horse shit inside it. Furious at Sonia's audacity, Dragan decides to assemble the largest army possible to conquer Hyrcania and lead the army himself. A battle of wits. In Shadinar, near the Gate of Triumph, Emperor Dragan looks at the long stretch of his army, admiring the strength of his empire. But before he can leave to conquer Hyrcania, his wife, Empress Fatmos, and his son, Prince Cyril, arrive to see him off. Cyril, who is upset about the long absence of his father, gets consoled by Dragan, reminding the child of his impending doom if he doesn't continue expanding his empire. Empress Fatmos, on the other hand, couldn't care less about Dragan's conquests and calls his actions to be of foolishness. Dragan presents his son with a rope which has 60 knots, each for every day Dragan will be gone. If Dragan doesn't return within the 60 days, Cyril will take over the throne, with Dragan taking the promise that Cyril will hang his enemy with that very same rope. Meanwhile, in the war lodge of Hyrcania, Sonia is surprised to find out that the treasury has been emptied out in the last couple of years, the gold key of the treasury being the only gold that is left. In the midst of this, Cryon, arrives with Circus, Sonya's new tongue of fire, as well as a member of her war council. Circus won the position by the most honest Hykraneian, and his purpose is to prevent the leaders from getting surrounded by people who only flatter their decisions. Circus, being the honest man he is, reveals that he is ready to betray anyone, including Sonja, to protect his own life, frustrating the new queen even more with her present situation. Taking their conversation outside, Cryon suggests to Sonja to allow him and his group of bandits, called Brothers of Misfortune, to rob gold for the treasury. Sonja, being against robbing the people who they are trying to protect, makes Cryon change his suggestion to robbing foreign merchants instead of Hykraneians. Sonja, although approving of this new suggestion, wants to protect Cryon, as he is the only family she has left. Cryon, despite understanding Sonja's concern, put forth his stance that he preferred fighting for his family till his last breath, rather than hiding away like a coward. Leaving Cryon to handle the robbery, Sonja assembles with her war council, where she decides that the first move they can make against the large Zamoran army is to slow down their arrival to Hykranea by preventing their crossing of the Vilayat Sea. Upon their arrival near the Vilayat Sea, Dragan and his overconfidence are shocked to find all 3 of their bridges burnt, leaving them with no way of crossing. This led Dragan to request Sonja for a meeting, with Sonja and her war council being dragged in a raft to cross the sea. Finally coming face to face, Dragan wastes no time to mock Sonja and her army, starting with mocking Sonja for being responsible for only one kingdom, while Dragan has to look after an empire, and then pointing out the lack of proper battle gear, calling the Hykranea army to be nothing but a group of glorified thieves. Asking Sonja once again to just submit to the Zamoran Empire instead of fighting a losing battle. Sonja is quick to retort his point by pointing out that even bad swords can kill men. As for the many flaws of her army, Sonja points out that Dragan's words mean very little to her, because despite being an emperor, all Dragan has to show for it is that he is a servant to people's expectations of him. People who are just being oppressed and will eventually overthrow him at any point when Dragan shows even an ounce of weakness. Dragan points out to Sonja's words being nothing but a mask to hide her fear of losing the battle. Sonja, though, quickly points out that she has nothing to be afraid of. She is ready to get her army and fight Dragan in his terrain, or walk back 5 miles to let Dragan enter Hykranea and fight him headfirst there. Dragan's advisors initially suggest him to let the Hykraneian army cross the sea, but upon hearing some of them mocking him for being afraid of a small army that too ruled by a woman, Dragan's ego gets the best of him, and he decides to cross over to Hykranea to start the battle. With the Zamoran army crossing the sea, Sonja and her army keep their end of the terms she has presented to Dragan and go back 5 miles. With the army nearing Hykranea, upon hearing that the only remaining thing to cross is their baggage train, Dragan realizes Sonja's calculating manipulation. Sonja had actually understood the option Dragan was going to choose earlier. With that in mind, she had ordered Cryon and his Brothers of Misfortune to ride around the Vilayet Sea and attack Dragan's baggage train, stealing all the weapons for the Hykraneian army. Meanwhile, on the other side, Sonja ordered her army to empty the kingdom and recruit everyone for their talents to be put into use in this tough battle. Not our men. In a flashback to Kitai, we see Domo assigning a young Sonja to capture a rogue general named Kalho. Domo was surprised at Sonja's confidence, despite Kalho being a tough man to capture, and questioned her. Sonja revealed her army of 50 soldiers being the reason for her confidence. Upon hearing this, Domo offered a gold coin to any soldier who would abandon their mission, increasing the reward each time. Sonja was eventually left with only 2 soldiers to support her. Sonja, baffled at the situation, questioned Domo about his actions, to which he replied that it was to stop her being overconfident. When Sonja pointed out that Domo paid a heavy price to get rid of 48 of her soldiers, Domo corrected her by saying that those were never her soldiers to begin with. Back in the present day, Sonja finds a faraway location from Dragan's cavalry to set up her camp. Upon hearing that a messenger has been sent out from Dragan's camp, Sonja realizes that Dragan must have sent out the messenger for more supplies. This gives the Hykraneian army enough time to prepare against the Zamoran army. The Brothers of Misfortune also arrived there with the stolen bounty, but hearing that Cryon also managed to come back alive, Sonja feels relieved. Reuniting with her cousin, Sonja welcomes Cryon, who is overjoyed with the gold and weapons he has managed to steal. Although Sonia reminds him that the loot is only to help the war, but as a token of appreciation, lets Cryon keep one of Dragon's hats, which he is already wearing. Meanwhile, at the Zamoran camp, Dragon has started sulking over his current situation. But upon being visited by one of his advisors who tries to cheer him up, Dragon reveals that he is more upset about having to ask his wife for more supplies, rather than about the loss he has suffered. The High Cranian War Council, on the other hand, are overjoyed by the loot, with the wealth being a lot more than what they have seen in the last few years. With the new supplies yet to arrive for the Zamorans, Cryon assumes that it will buy them at least 2 weeks more to prepare. But instead of using the loot for battle, he suggests Sonia use this opportunity to make their escape. Although Sonia wants to figure out their odds of fighting before deciding to escape. When Cryon points out that each day they decide to stay is one day closer to death, Sonia assures him that they are safe, at least for 2 more weeks. During this preparation, Sonia is visited by Vorgon from the Woodland tribes, who are offering troops to support the High Cranians in the battle. Initially mentioning that they are guarding the eastern flank, despite the Zamoran army being in the west, his true intentions became clear as day when Vorgon asked for steel swords in exchange for their help. Sonia quickly denies Vorgon's help, refusing to hire mercenaries, instead telling her new army to escort Vorgon out of the camp and replacing his troops with their own army. Seeing the High Cranian soldiers being women, Vorgon felt insulted. Sonia revealed that widows and women who are past their childbearing days, known as the Baron, have often joined the army and are great fighters in High Crania. When Vorgon mocked these women by calling them old and useless, Isolde, the leader of the Baron, quickly showed Vorgon his place by pointing out that he lacked both qualities expected of a good soldier, toughness and brains. Isolde revealed her fighting days of trying to feed her 2 children in the cold, harsh winter, when raiders had stolen their crops, and when she walked 5 miles with an arrow on her back to warn the next village of an attack. With no words left to counter, Vorgon and his troop eventually left. But when one of Sonia's advisors told her that they need the help of those men, Sonia repeated the words she had heard from Domo years ago, that those are not their men. Going back to Sonia's past mission in Kitai, we find out that Domo's lesson ended up working out in Sonia's favor. Karlho did know all the tricks from the book, but what he didn't expect was for Sonia and her 2 soldiers to break into his castle, kidnapping him while he enjoyed a private moment. Had Sonia gone there with all 50 of the soldiers, they would have faced absolute defeat. Realizing that no matter how confusing Domo's ideas might seem, it's always a wise one, Sonia questioned if he was born a wise man. Domo, on the other hand, recalled how he didn't even remember being born. For all the memories of childhood was of working as a child slave in the gold mine of a local warlord. He served almost 20 years of his life there, when one day, digging too far inside led to the release of a poisonous gas, leaving him as the only survivor. Upon coming out of the mine, he found solace when he realized the gold mine had been taken over by a rival warlord who gave him a choice to leave. Even though the other option was to continue working in the mine, Domo chose to leave and became a soldier instead for the rival warlord, not wanting for the gold mine to someday become his grave too. Back in Emperor Dragon's camp, his advisor, Minos, reveals that new supplies are on their way already. Although Dragon is less than happy to be in the situation, Minos reveals that he has asked for the rest of the Empire's chariots to get the supplies within a week instead of 2. Meanwhile, to weaken the High Cranian army, Minos reveals his other trump card to Dragon, none other than Vorgon, who is ready to attack the High Cranians in exchange for the loot to be their own. Although underestimating the skills of the Baron women, Vorgon and his troops ended up facing a harrowing defeat in the hands of what they referred to as old, useless women. Know your enemy. With new supplies finally arriving in chariots from Shadinar, Dragon is hell-bent on winning the battle, especially when the new supplies' early arrival came at the cost of leaving his empire almost defenseless without the chariots. Meanwhile, at the High Cranian camp, Sonia finally decides to move the people. But with the news of the enemies being already prepared with new weapons as well as chariots, she realizes that she may have led her people to their doom. Cryon, hearing Sonia's worries, assures her that even though they are going to face a deadly war, it can just be the gods putting them through a test, making Sonia wonder what these gods are planning for them. With the battle being for survival rather than winning, one of the members of the War Council council, Fyodor advises Sonia to make their most capable warrior to lead the charge. Realizing that Fyodor is correct, Sonia decides to lead the battle herself. But another of the members realizes Fyodor's calculative move, questioning him about it. Fyodor reveals that his intention is to either protect Hykrannians from the wrath of Dragan or from Sonia's assumed foolishness. Going back to Sonia's time in Kitai, during the peaceful and in turn happier days, Sonia, during a training session with other soldiers, overpowered them to the point of gloating until Domo stopped her. Domo reminded Sonia that her strength cannot be the only way to win battles, because someday she would meet someone stronger than her, and unfortunately for her, that day would be the end of her story. Domo and Sonia's conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the Prince of Kitai, who questions Domo's qualifications as a war master, given that Kitai had not fought in a war for decades. Domo then pointed out that it was exactly a proof of his expertise. But brushing off his words, the young prince quickly mentioned that sitting out war would not be a choice once he came to power, taking his leave from the premise. Domo, resuming the conversation with Sonia, reminded her that only foolish people rely on strength to win battles. The real way to win was to actually know your enemy well enough to guess their next step. Sonia, realizing the only way to win against soldiers in chariots is to attack them from behind, asks Cryon for advice. Cryon suggests taking their army to the Shallows, a place unknown to Sonia, as she doesn't remember much from her childhood in Hykrannia. Seeing the Shallows being land full of small grass, Sonia questions the capability of the area to hide their army. But trusting Cryon's judgment, she hides underneath the small mounds of grass while waiting for the Zamoran soldiers. Fortunately, their plan becomes successful as the Zamoran soldiers move past them, only to be attacked surprisingly by the Hykrannian army from the back. As Dragan and his advisor Minas discuss the plans for Hykrannia's future, Dragan reveals his intention of gifting the kingdom to one of his loyal servants, maybe someone he doesn't like very much. Minas, realizing Dragan's hint to be the kingdom being under his rule, assures the emperor that their soldiers are probably finishing off the Hykrannian army as they speak. Unbeknownst to them, they have grossly underestimated the Hykrannians, with the group of Zamoran soldiers following her army lying dead in the Shallows. One of the sole survivors of this battle arrives in Dragan's tent to inform him about their defeat, disappointing Dragan. At the rendezvous point, Sonia plans her next move of creating 4 decoy trails to mislead Dragan's army. Cryon appreciates Sonia's Hykrannia mindset, but questions her how she could be sure that Dragan will not create different groups to follow each trail. Sonia assures Cryon that the loss Dragan has just suffered will prevent him from dividing his army to follow each trail, and if he focuses on only one, then it will buy the Hykrannians more time to plan and prepare. Finding out about this development, Dragan takes out his anger by punishing Minas for losing the chariots as well as soldiers. But as Minas is hanging by one leg, his luck finally changes with the surviving soldier, revealing to Dragan that Sonia called the leader of the bandits her cousin. Realizing this could be useful information, Dragan carries on with his punishment for Minas. But in those few moments, Minas reveals that he has a new idea to counter Sonia. Sacrifices. Inside Dragan's camp, Dragan listens to the future being written beforehand by his historian Foghor. Foghor writes about Sonia the Red trying her best to escape the Zamoran army, but caught from all sides by the army. With her people scattered in fear and no one left to help her fight, Sonia is finally forced to meet the wrath of Emperor Dragan, the divine ruler. Questioning why their win is being written beforehand, Foghor explains to Dragan that with his role of being of a divine emperor, he can shape these words to reality soon. In the past, Sonia and Domo played a game of chess once again with Sonia, losing as per the usual. But this time, Domo pointed out how she cared more for every piece of her chessboard, when Sonia pointed out it was the whole point of the game. Domo explained to her that in her effort to protect all her pieces, she was actually protecting none of them. What she was actually lacking was a proper strategy to win the game, and by that, he politely meant sacrifice. Returning to the present day, Sonia continues her focus on maintaining distance from the Zamoran army, but her general Tiberius points out their plan being that of no honor. Tiberius also pointed out the destruction of their crops and fields in the hands of the Zamoran army. As a solution, Sonia orders Cryon to evacuate all common folks from the kingdom, forcing them if they still refuse to leave. At this moment, Hannah the cupbearer requests Sonia to be allowed to speak. Hannah reveals her homeland, Koth, being one of the kingdoms taken over by the Zamoran Empire in the past. Despite this, the nobles had tried to resist the dictatorship and were in turn punished for it, including her father, who was one of the nobles. She was taken into captivity by the Zamoran Empire along with the children of other nobles, and in turn this led to peace in Koth and also the end of any resistance. She was not forced into a harsh life, but rather lived comfortably as she became a Zamoran noblewoman. Finally, years later, she was allowed to return to Koth. Although her mother had passed away during this time, while her brother joined the Zamoran army, she was happy to return to her homeland to live among her people. But upon returning, she found that Koth had lost its culture completely, becoming the same as the people of Shadinar. Unhappy with this new reality, Hannah dismissed all the servants, burned down her home, and left Koth forever. Finishing her story, Hannah tells Sonja that her efforts to save everything will lead to nothing, as the land and the people will be destroyed either way. The only way to fight Dragon is to let go of the illusion that what they have already lost can be saved. As Cryon returns after finding more common folk, he complains to Sonja that people seem to hate him more for saving their lives rather than for stealing from them. In this moment, Sonja becomes vulnerable, recalling Hannah's words and calling her right that while trying to save their past, they are going to become weaker. As the two share about their past, Cryon recalls being saved by Sonja when he was just a child, which Sonja doesn't remember. He continues with his tales, talking about how people like to think that he could have been a well-adjusted man if he tried, but actually he just became what life taught him to be. Hearing Cryon's words, that no one is born with anything but rather become the person they actually are, Sonja gets the strength to do what is necessary. Sitting with the War Council once again, Sonja reveals that they will continue their move, but this time destroying everything in their path, houses, crops, fields, before they can come under the clutches of the Zamoran army. With their soldiers and animals starving, time will be their ally in the war. Faced with another question of no more land of Hyrcania left for them to retreat to, Sonja decides to continue their journey to the west, where the woodlands are located, as soon as the Brothers of Misfortune arrives with the last of the rescues. But unfortunately for Sonja, the Brothers of Misfortune face a sudden attack from the Zamoran soldiers during their rescue, taking away Cryon as their prisoner. When Sonja finally gets to know about this through a letter sent to her, she wants to try her best to rescue Cryon. But with the soldiers nearing them, Hannah reminds Sonja that Dragon is trying to control her by controlling the people she loves. With tears falling down her cheeks, Sonja, with a heavy heart, decides to continue their move to the woodlands while burning everything on their path. Alliance. Back in Kitai, not long before Sonja ran away from there, Sonja warned Domo about the obvious fact that the prince was planning on killing his father, the king of Kitai, along with Domo. But Domo showed no signs of being worried about it. When Sonja questioned him about it, he revealed that worrying about someone's possible actions would be just wasting his mind in matters that one couldn't know about for sure. His point being that when you worry about everything, then you fail to make a decision that would be needed to fight against the present situation. When Sonja asked Domo when he would actually bother about the prince, he replied it would not be until he got actual proof to take an action. In the present day, Sonja and the Hyrcanian army stopped their move to get some rest, while feeling guilt for not being able to save the last of her bloodline. Meanwhile, in Dragon's camp, he grows impatient with Sonja's tactics, hoping for her to surrender soon. But his army is also suffering during this wait. With the crops and fields turned into ashes, his army and the animals are left starving. With no other options left, Dragon orders his council to feed the horses to the soldiers. When questioned about needing the horses later, Dragon points to their latest captive, Cryon, being their chance to win the war through different means. This is soon revealed to be a marriage proposal sent to Sonja. He sends a letter to Sonja mentioning the war benefiting no one and people starving on both ends, so Dragon proposes for them to come together in holy matrimony. Dragon also assures Sonja that despite being already married along with a son, they can be united to become a powerful couple, as his wife is already set on being a nun for the rest of her life. With their union, Sonja can save her people and her kingdom, as well as help Dragon to expand his empire, and as a wedding present, Cryon will return to Sonja's side. Realizing that it is more of a political alliance than a marriage for love, Sonja thinks about taking the proposal into consideration. Jumping back to Kitai, Sonja, in order to find proof of the prince's plans to dethrone his father, sneaked into the prince's room by climbing the castle walls. At the same time, inside the room, the prince and his loyal advisor Tortoise discussed their plan to poison the king. When the prince opposed the idea, Tortoise reminded him that with Domo being alive and well, the young prince would fail to gain support from the royal army if he tried to directly attack the king. Tortoise had also written down special orders that would help the prince become the new king once his father would die, with nobody being able to trace back the poison to the prince. After the prince hid the scroll in the back of a mounted boar head, Sonia sneakily tried to retrieve it, but ended up being discovered by an incoming guard. Trying to protect herself, Sonia stabbed the guard with her sword, while the prince ordered more guards to attack her. Losing the scroll while trying to escape, Sonia jumped out of the window into the river below, while Tortoise decided to speed up their plans. In the present day, Sonia sits with her war council to discuss Dragon's marriage proposal. All the members unanimously agree that the union will help the majority of their problems to go away, something that rarely happens. Dismissing the rest of the council, Sonia sits with Isolde, asking for her opinion, but Isolde, rather than giving advice, shares about her 4 marriages, all of whom she had married for very different reasons, but none of which ended on a good note. The final advice she gives to Sonia is to let a man put a ring on her finger but not a collar, reminding her to not let Dragon ever control her. Meanwhile, Dragon decides his wedding attire inside his camp when he finds out that Sonia has not yet sent a reply to his proposal, making him angry and frustrated. Foghorn tries to make Dragon understand that adding the Hyrcanians into the Zamoran Empire through marriage is not a good idea, for they are thieves and selfish people. Dragon, on the other hand, believes that the Hyrcanians can be a good addition to their army because of their accomplished horse riding skill. And as for Sonia, he will send her on a suicide mission soon after the wedding to get rid of her. Although none of these plans seems to be coming to fruition once Foghorn notices that Cryon has stabbed himself to death using Minos's dagger, the news of which is soon delivered to Sonia. Back in Kitai, after escaping the guards, Sonia visited Domo to inform him of the situation at hand, although Domo had already caught up to the news. Sonia apologized to Domo for her rash method that had put both her and Domo's life in jeopardy. She requested Domo to run away with her, but Domo refused to leave the side of his king, while also pointing out that his old age would only slow down Sonia. Sonia, still trying to persuade Domo, promised to fix herself, but Domo instead told her to be careful about what she fixed, because sometimes flaws were exactly what made a person unique. With guards knocking on Domo's doors, Domo reminded Sonia to give it her all to survive, and to never give in to the enemy's expectations of her. Domo ordered Sonia to run away, and as soon as she left, the door came down with one of the royal guards stabbing Domo in the stomach. In the present, Sonia's much-awaited reply to Dragon's marriage proposal arrives in the form of a box that has a dead gopher, a dead bird, and an arrow inside. Dragon gets confused with the meaning of this gift, mistaking it for a peace offering, but Minos points out the true meaning to be, if you cannot fly through the air like a bird or tunnel under the ground like a gopher, then you shall surely die by our arrows. As Dragon hears these words, Sonia announces to her war council that the wedding is off, but instead of moving to a different location, they are going to fight Dragon head on, something which he hasn't expected from her. Deception. As Sonia lights a piece of wood with the fire of Cryon's burning body, she recalls the handful of memories she has of her childhood with Cryon. She remembers how, despite having not many toys to play with, there was a lot of grass around them. So Cryon and Sonia used to spend their time making grass shields out of them, which when held at the right angle made them invisible from the world and their responsibilities. Heading towards her camp, Sonia announces to the men that the funeral is over, and once daylight arrives, they will launch their attack. Remembering the friends she has said her goodbyes to recently, Sonia remembers the last lesson Domo had taught her by winning the chess match through cheating, that the one of the deadliest pieces on the board is the one that goes unnoticed by the opponent, making Sonia determined to eliminate some of her enemies just like her friends. In the morning, angered by Sonia's rejection, Dragon takes out his frustration by making oxen walk over the Hyrcanian captives, leaving behind a bloody trail of bodies. During this, one of the soldiers guarding the parameters is killed by an arrow, as the other soldiers notice the Hyrcanian army riding towards them. But once Dragon orders his soldiers to fight them, to his shock and confusion, the Hyrcanian army divert their path. Although he soon realizes that this fake attack has been created to hide Sonia and his two soldiers from the view of the Zamorian army. The duo quickly starts shooting arrows towards Dragan as the Imperial guards come forward to fight them. Ordering her two soldiers to free the captives, Sonia charges forward towards the guards, killing them, and then enters the camp to look for Dragan. To her surprise, Dragan has already made his escape, forcing Sonia to save one of his soldiers who is about to be killed. Slicing snakes, Dragan's beloved bodyguard, into two, Sonia and the captives ride away with Dragan's camp that is attached to the oxen. Meeting up with her council later, Sonia regrets not being able to kill Dragan and end the war at once. But Circus, her tongue of fire, reminds her that killing one man wouldn't ever end a war. For the death of one king is easily resolved by the creation of another, and the children of the soldiers who once created the empire will just go on to replace the soldiers that have given up their life, believing their true calling is serving the nation they are born in. Back in Dragan's new camp, he awaits the arrival of Foghorn, who has come up with a new plan to help him. Much to the Emperor's horror, this new plan is revealed to be the disfigured face of Foghorn, lacking his nose and both his ears. Foghorn, elaborating his plans, reveals that he will visit Sonia, blaming Dragan for his condition, that Dragan has punished him for failing as an advisor by disfiguring him. Feeling sympathy for his condition, Sonia will allow him to join her war council, and this will lead her to her doom. Hearing Foghorn's plan, Dragan gives him the permission to execute it, and in case his plan works, then Dragan promises to let Foghorn rule Hyrcania on his behalf. Trust. As the Hyrcanians march away from their enemies, they leave behind nothing but a trail of fire and ashes. Upset at this, Dragan wonders how he will provide for his army with no fertile land around for harvest. Meanwhile, the Hyrcanians have finally reached their destination, the woodland tribes. Setting up camp outside, Sonia enters the woods with the guards to meet with Lord Oak, the protector of the woodland tribes. Informing Lord Oak about their current predicament, Sonia tries to gain his support by revealing to him that once Dragan is done with the Hyrcanians, the Zamorans will come for them next. But Lord Oak remains skeptical about trusting the Hyrcanians. Sonia accepts the deceit that runs in the blood of Hyrcanians, but also reminds Lord Oak of the betrayal she suffered at the hands of Lord Oak's nephew, Vorgon. Blaming Vorgon's greed for his own predicament, Lord Oak takes Sonia's proposal to unite against Dragan into consideration and welcomes the Hyrcanians as his guests while making the decision. Returning to the camp, Sonia is then shocked to encounter a disfigured Foghorn, who, unbeknownst to her, has put his evil plans into motion. As Minos later informs Dragan that before meeting up with Sonia, Foghorn presented some of the soldiers from the woodland tribes with gifts of steel swords. Following his next part of the plan, Foghorn shares the lie of Dragan, punishing him through mutilation for Sonia's refusal to marry. Lying further, Foghorn reveals his hope of getting his revenge by serving Sonia as a trusted advisor, with his first advice to Sonia being that Dragan has already made a deal with Lord Oak, who will soon kill Sonia. Despite hearing this, Sonia remains firm on her belief that Lord Oak doesn't come off as a betrayer. But in Foghorn's evident situation, Sonia's war council couldn't help but trust Foghorn's words. Inside the forest, Lord Oak decides to form an alliance with Sonia, given the threat of Dragan. Despite his advisor's opinion, Lord Oak seems to have trust in Sonia, and with a threat coming towards them, he doesn't think that they have any other option. Hearing all of the discussion by hiding behind the trees are the few soldiers who were bribed earlier by Foghorn. Before Lord Oak manages to send this news, two of these greedy soldiers reach Sonia's camp, telling her that Lord Oak has asked for her presence. As Sonia and her two war council members follow the soldiers to Lord Oak, the woodland soldiers make their move and kill the two council members with their swords. Sonia, all by herself, fights the two woodland soldiers along with some more hiding inside the trees. As she manages to return to her camp, Sonia confirms Lord Oak's presumed betrayal and decides to break camp. Unfortunately for Lord Oak, this was not the only bad news he received, as his advisors revealed the arrival of Emperor Dragan, who changed his course towards the woodland tribes. Within a few hours, Lord Oak is captured by Dragan, who sits on his throne. With Lord Oak refusing to pledge his loyalty to Dragan, Dragan burns down the forest completely, bringing an end to the small tribe. The next day, Sonia and his army ride through the wasteland as she is left to wonder if her judgment of Lord Oak was wrong. The Tower of Uyghur Nomadin. 10 years earlier, the king of Koth traveled the land of Hyrcania in search of a place so magical and powerful that it had been mentioned in legends. But the journey was long and tiring as the king lost his last loyal follower, Mansur. But he finally managed to find the magical place, a tower in the form of a hand, with faces of spirits engraved on it. It was the Tower of Uyghur Nomadin, surrounded by nothing but hundreds of skeletons. Entering the tower, the king of Koth presented himself to be a visitor, but was labeled a traitor by the sorcerers living inside. When asked about his desire, the king of Koth revealed the loss of his kingdom in the hands of Emperor Dragon, that thousands were captured, and his desire to save his kingdom. As a token of payment, the king offered a gold chalice, the only thing he was able to take from his palace before fleeing. The sorcerers agreed to his demands, as the king found himself sitting in his palace with other noblemen. They celebrated the exile of Dragon in the hands of the sorcerers, but as he brought up his cup for a toast, it was revealed to be nothing but an illusion to keep him trapped inside the tower until his death. In the present, a desperate Sonia alongside a reluctant Hannah followed the same path to the Tower of Uyghur Nomadin. Hannah advises Sonia against it, but she tells Hannah that it won't be her first visit to the tower, and if she had any other options, then she wouldn't have turned to sorcerers. Recognizing Sonia, the sorcerers ask her the reason for her visit. Sonia reveals to them about the arrival of a great threat, Emperor Dragon, a name all too familiar to the sorcerers. Sonia warns about his army of thousands, which poses a threat not only to the Hyrcanians but also to the sorcerers, pointing out to them that if they think being locked away in the tower will protect them, then they are making a grave mistake. When asked if she has gotten a gift for them, Sonia reveals that what she is gifting to them is the reality of the world outside the tower, where Dragon has killed thousands, if not less, in his greed for power. The sorcerers don't seem to be much moved by her words, though, as they have been improving their magic for years, making them convinced that they can take care of themselves. When Sonia asks them why they don't use their magic to actually help the world, they reveal that controlling the world by magic will only get the person controlled by magic itself. They believe their magic helps them not be controlled by the happenings of the outside world, and the power present in the outside world to be nothing but an illusion. When Sonia requests them once again for their support, they reveal that finding trustworthy allies is a rare occurrence. It is dangerous to refuse help, but sometimes it is far more dangerous to accept it. Meanwhile, outside the Hyrcanian camp in the wasteland, Foghor sends a map with their location to Dragon with his trusted horse. Inside the camp, Hannah delivers the news of Sonia going to the sorcerers of the Tower of Uyghur Nomadin to the War Council. Not having faith in the sorcerers, as well as in Sonia's return, the council decides that they may need a new monarch. Hannah tries to persuade the council against losing faith in Sonia, but with their mind set against it, she leaves the camp, while also warning the Brothers of Misfortune to leave. Inside the camp, all the members continue their own argument about their next possible move. Tiberius confesses to believing that both Dragon as well as the sorcerers pose a huge threat to them, for Dragon has more soldiers and better resources, while the sorcerers come with their own power of magic. Interrupting this discussion comes Foghor, who reveals to them that the woodland tribes have been burnt to ashes for their failure in delivering Sonia. Using the lie of Lord Oak's betrayal, Foghor convinces them that sorcerers will not be keen on helping them either. Sonia, as great a queen she was, has hurt Dragon's ego, and he will never agree to bargain with her, but he may agree to bargain with a new monarch. Using this opportunity to get Tiberius on his side, Fyodor the Noble gets Isolde and another loyal soldier of Sonia attacked, while Tiberius orders the soldiers to capture Hannah. With no more of Sonia's allies around them, Tiberius announces Fyodor as the new king of Hyrcania, while putting the Brothers of Misfortune under arrest. But Tiberius's betrayal ends up costing him his life, as a surviving Isolde gets up to kill him and escapes the camp along with the barons. A soldier later arrives to inform Fyodor about the Brothers of Misfortune also fleeing the camp, but the remaining army and the people are his now. Fyodor tries to convince Circus to be his tongue of fire, but unfortunately for him, Circus too makes his escape. Inside the Tower of Uyghur Nomadin, the sorcerers reveal the Hall of Visions to Sonia, showing her a futuristic world and also her happy childhood. They reveal that with their powers, they can exist in any point of time, and can also make the experience of a memory last longer than it actually did. The sorcerers try their best to convince Sonia to remain with them inside the tower. But Sonia, determined to save her people, asks the sorcerers for their help one last time. The sorcerers, though, remain stuck on not wanting to help the outside world, for it has nothing more than blindness to offer them. But they allow Sonia to return to the world of suffering once more. Once Sonia thanks them for letting her leave, the sorcerers remind her that it is not the reward she thinks of it to be. Once Sonia comes out of the tower, she is greeted back by Hannah, Isolde, Circus, and the Brothers of Misfortune. She remains confused if the spell of the sorcerers has ended, or if she is still trapped inside. But once she hears about the events that have taken place in her absence, she realizes that she is back to reality. Back at the Hykrannian camp, Fyodor requests Foghorn to facilitate the negotiations for his surrender with Dragan. But as they head outside, Fyodor is surprised to find that Dragan and his army are already waiting for him. Racing like a rabbit. With Fyodor being the new king of Hykrannia, he formally surrenders to Dragan, feigning his loyalty to the Zamoran Empire, as well as agreeing to all of Dragan's demands. But much to Fyodor's shock, Dragan gave the crown of Hykrannia to Foghorn and made him the new king, while making Fyodor an advisor, just like Minos. While Sonia and her few loyal supporters discuss their new plan of action now that they have lost support of the small army they had earlier. The Brothers of Misfortune points out that they have lost the war, with no way of winning. Now they are better off living the life of bandits. Sonia still remains determined to protect the people of Hykrannia, as she had once promised to when she became the queen. Circus points out to her that earlier they were lambs who were going to be slaughtered, but now they are like rabbits, undeserving of the axe, and he prefers it that way. This reminded Sonia of the time when Domo had told her the story of how Rabbit became the sigil of the Master of War upon her insistence. Domo revealed to her that back when he had just joined the army of Kitai, 3 soldiers hoped to steal gold from him after hearing that he used to work in a gold mine. When Domo failed to give them gold, they accused him of theft and wanted a trial by combat. Unable to fight back, Domo ran from them as fast as possible, something he had learnt to avoid danger in the gold mine. By the time they finally caught up to him, they were too tired to fight, making it easy for Domo to take them on one by one. The rabbit then became a reminder for him that pride would lead you to suicide. Had he tried to fight the 3 men together, then he would have definitely lost. But forcing them to be tired by running, he was able to make them lose easily. Back in Dragan's camp, Dragan dismisses Fyodor's demands to ask him about the whereabouts of Sonia, to which Fyodor reveals about her last entering the Tower of Vigur Nomadane, where the rest of her supporters may be waiting for her. Appreciating Fyodor's usefulness, Dragan orders Minos to clean his crown, while revealing to Fyodor that Minos used to be a very powerful king once upon a time. 6 years ago, Minos was the king of Aquilonia when Dragan arrived there to conquer the kingdom. Despite his advisors telling him to not fight back and rather surrender himself, Minos decided to listen to his magical advisors, Teraphim. These were 4 severed talking heads, who upon being fed a gold coin, saw the future after given one question. Unfortunately, Minos had interpreted their visions of the future in a wrong way, thinking that he can fight Dragan, not realizing that the future they talked of would come to be once Minos became Dragan's advisor. After starting to lose the war against Dragan, Minos blamed Teraphim for his own stupidity and ended up surrendering himself and his kingdom to Dragan. Meanwhile, Sonia finally realizes how to make Dragan pay for his sins, deciding that instead of fighting the losing battle, they will race the Zamoran Empire to the bridge in the Vilayet Sea. This will trap the Zamoran army in Hykrannia, making the land their grave. Back in Dragan's camp, Dragan shows his anger towards Minos for his wrongful advice, leading to the loss of his chariots and allowing his kingdoms the chance to rebel in Dragan's absence. Minos, realizing that he cannot make Dragan trust him for long, presents Teraphim the severed heads to him as a token of his apparent apology. When Dragan asks the heads about Sonia being a possible threat for him, their words get misinterpreted by Dragan, making him think that Sonia is escaping to save herself, not realizing that it has been part of Minos' plan to misguide him. Power in loyalty. Awaiting his return to Shadinar, Dragan enjoys his victory of conquering Hyrcania, although his people still continue to suffer because of the lack of supplies to eat, forcing them to eat their dogs. But Dragan doesn't worry too much about this predicament, as news supplies are ordered from Shadinar. Although unbeknownst to him, the bridge in Vilayet C is being taken over by Sonia and his tribe, who have killed all the Zamoran soldiers guarding the bridge. Not wanting to remain in Hyrcania anymore, Dragan questions the Teraphim about his safe return to Shadinar, but fails to understand their warning of Sonia waiting there to attack. Calling the few remaining people of Hyrcania, Dragan announces about his departure and of Foghor being the new king, ruling on his behalf, warning them to not forget about their loyalty to the Zamoran Empire. But this happiness ends up being short-lived as the guards arrive to reveal that their supplies, as well as the bridge, has been captured. Back at the Shadinar side of the bridge, Sonia orders her supporters to kill anyone from the Zamoran army trying to cross the bridge with arrows, while those who do make it to the side of Shadinar to be killed with swords. The Brothers of Misfortune question what if the Zamoran army just decide to wait it out, to which Sonia reveals that without any supplies to eat and land to grow new crops, they will be desperate to cross over. Isolde also comes up with her own question of the Zamoran army trying to build a new bridge or boats, but Sonia assures her that by burning down the woodland tribes, Dragan has cornered his armies. Unlike them, who have always lived poorly and thus know to respect the bare minimum resources, Dragan has not given much thought to what he has disposed of in the arrogance of his empire. Back in Shadinar, one survivor from the supply train reveals that Sonia has captured the supply train, as well as the bridge, to Empress Fatmos and the Oricon, who had informed Dragan of his doom if doesn't extend his empire. But Empress Fatmos decides to hide this information from Prince Cyril while discussing him not being Dragan's son, but of her and the Oricons. Their moment of hugging is witnessed by Prince Cyril, who hopes for Dragan's return to allow them to be a happy family like earlier. Meanwhile, back at Hyrcania, Minos offers to send his servant, Philippus, to his kingdom of Aquilonia for more cavalry that can help them seize control of the bridge. Dragan questions Minos' intentions directly, and even searches through Philippus's belongings to make sure that Minos doesn't try to betray him. Unable to find a proof, he lets Philippus go to Aquilonia while apologizing to Minos for being paranoid. As Sonia and her tribe await the arrival of the Zamoran army, she cannot help but feel confident that nothing can stop them from winning. When questioned by Circus about the reason for this confidence, she reveals that she trusts each and everyone who stands with her at this moment, and they might be less in numbers, but they are loyal and strong together. Unlike the Zamoran Empire, which has different people running it for their different desires, as they wait for the day they can break free from the shackles of it. Back in Aquilonia, Philippus enters the castle to meet with Minos' son, Mortimus, and present him with his father's orders. But when Mortimus reads the letter of order, Philippus reveals to him that the letter is nothing but an excuse to let him enter the castle, because Minos' actual message has been tattooed on his head. As Philippus shaves his head, the message is revealed to be telling Mortimus that it's time to revolt against the Zamoran Empire. Emperor Dragan, the Fallen, taking advantage of their terrain being filled with dry grass, Sonia orders her soldiers to cut the grass just short enough to come in handy once their enemies arrive near the bridge. With the Zamoran cavalry arriving, the attack starts with burning arrows. Using the length of the grass, the fire is able to spread in a manner that it drives the riders away from the bridge and towards the cliff. With the horses scared for their lives, the cavalry faces defeat and falls into a cliff. Dragan then orders for the armored infantry to attack. Initially feeling confident as their armors protect them from the arrows, they approach towards the bridge. But unbeknownst to them, the Baron soldiers hide underneath the bridge, killing them with spears. Meanwhile, Foghor takes charge as the king and announces the names of the people who will be sacrificed to the gods in prayer for Dragan's victory. This is cut short by the arrival of a soldier who lets Foghor know that Dragan has asked for all soldiers, including the reserves, serving Foghor to join the fight for the bridge near Vilayet C. The absence of the soldiers leaves Foghor unprotected and at the mercy of the people who he wanted to sacrifice. Back in Shadinar, news comes for Empress Fatmos as she is informed about the beginning of the battle between Sonia and Dragan's army. The Oricon, on the other hand, feels guilty about the many men that will die in that battle in their attempt to get rid of Dragan. But Fatmos reminds him that Dragan's battles are foolishness, and so is theirs, but in no way can they let the truth of them misleading Dragan with a false curse to get rid of him with the help of wars to reach Prince Cyril. Dragan, being his overconfident self, releases the berserkers on Sonya's army. These are men who have been tortured in the dungeons for years, and now they shall take their revenge. But still not satisfied with just them, Dragan orders more men to overwhelm Sonya's army. At the bridge, the Baron's soldiers point out to Sonia that they need to destroy the bridge, for they are being overrun with Zamoran soldiers. Sonia tells her army to keep fighting, as all the pieces are not on the board yet. We understand the meaning of this when, back in Kitai, Domo congratulated Sonia after she won a game against him, especially complimenting her for teaching him a lesson, as victory is not always guaranteed by always protecting the king, but sometimes by how well one treated their pawns. With the arrival of the cavalry of the Aquilonians, Dragan rejoices over more soldiers to finally defeat Sonia. But Minos finally reveals his true intentions, as a revolt is announced by the Aquilonian soldiers. Minos makes his escape from the tent and resigns from his post in the Zamoran Empire. With the bridge completely reclaimed and the rest of the Zamoran army trapped on the wrong side of the bridge, the Brothers of Misfortune and the Aquilonian soldiers decide to attack Dragan directly. With all the soldiers away, Dragan is only left under the protection of 2 guards, one of whom mistakenly stabs him at the back with his spear and then throws him off the tent as they escape. With the Zamoran Empire now weakened, Foghor is finally confronted by the common men of Hyrcania, while Prince Cyril is delivered the news of Dragan's defeat. Sonia finally comes in front of Dragan once again, but this time to finally end the reign of his terror on the Hyrcanians, as well as on the numerous other kingdoms that he had conquered. Ending the curse of building an empire, Sonia stabs Dragan with her sword, but in his final moments, Dragan warns Sonia if the curse of building an empire can truly end with the death of one man. The price of victory. With the war now finally over, the surviving members of the Zamoran army return to Shadinar, facing brutal defeat at the hands of the Hyrcanians. Meanwhile, those who have fallen remain in Hyrcania, a land they had wished to leave with their bodies either burnt, one of them being of the former greatest conqueror, Emperor Dragan the Magnificent. But both sides lost in the war. The Zamoran lost their men and some kingdoms, while the Hyrcanians lost their resources to survive. As Sonia and her council sit together at night, they are unable to feel happy for the win, as it came at the cost of their land and food supplies. With no crops remaining for the coming year, Sonia realizes it's not going to be long until they starve themselves to death. Sonia decides that they only have 2 options left on their hands: either wait for people to die until they have enough food for all, or take help from outside to feed their people. But taking help also doesn't come easy, as numerous kingdoms still remain a part of the Zamoran Empire. Isolde suggests Aquilonia, but their kingdom remains in a state of emergency as revolt goes on in their capital. Sonia also thinks of the kingdom of Vendia, but any supplies they send will be seized by the Gilish tribesmen who control the mountains. This leaves Sonia with only one kingdom to ask for help, the kingdom from where she had fled, and where she had lost the greatest man she knew because of her own mistakes, the land of Kitai. The next morning, Sonia announces to her people about her expedition to Kitai, along with Hannah and Scorpio, a member of the Brothers of Misfortune, while in her absence appointing Isolde of the Barons to rule Hyrcania on her behalf, with Circus serving as her tongue of fire. Meanwhile, in the temple of the Lord of Fools at Shadinar, Empress Fatmos and the Oricon try to celebrate the death of Dragan, while arranging the castle for Cyril to be the new emperor of the Zamoran Empire. But their celebration remains under the shadow of grief for numerous lives lost in the war, and also for the loss of her son, Cyril, who has left Shadinar to follow his own path. Sonia and her 2 allies travel the mountains, while under the watch of bandits hidden in plain sight, as Hannah questions Sonia that if they have nothing at all, and what is she planning to offer to the king of Kitai to receive supplies. As we jump back months earlier to Kitai, we find out that despite his best efforts of getting rid of his father, as well as the master of war, Domo, Prince Jokan, was unable to become the new king of Kitai because of the College of Generals set up by Domo. While Sonia remained alive, his actions as a traitor were still at the risk of being found out. But taking advantage of Sonia's Sonia's fear of returning. Jokan put the blame of his father, as well as Domo's death, on her, falsely accusing Sonia of also attempting to kill the prince and fleeing. The accusations made the generals skeptical because of Sonia being Domo's favorite pupil. But Prince Jokan tried to win the generals' favor with the fear of more assassins being free in Kitai, and in that case, Jokan becoming the new king should be of utmost priority. Returning to the present, Sonia, Hannah, and Scorpio continue their journey when the bandits attack the trio with arrows, injuring both Hannah and Scorpio's horses. Sonia takes the two of them on their horse while protecting themselves with the help of shields. Taking advantage of the crossing becoming narrower, Sonia sends her horse with 3 shields as distraction while attacking the bandits by surprise with the help of Scorpio, killing all of them. Hannah questions Sonia once again about how she plans to bargain with the king of Kitai, especially because now he is the most powerful man in the world following the death of Dragon. As they find 2 new horses and continue on their journey, Sonia reveals to them she plans to bargain with the only thing that could cost King Jokan his throne, which is herself. The horrors of famine. At Hyrcania, Isolde, the Queen Regent, gets the news of the granaries nearing its end, with food only being enough to last another month. The nobleman delivering the news suggests finding an alternative in case of Sonia failing to get more ration, and suggests cutting the supply for peasants, but Isolde reminds him that she is a peasant. Isolde then explains to him what will take place once the people start starving. First, it will be the farm animals that will be gone. Then comes silence in the villages. Dogs, cats, squirrels, birds, and even rats will not be spared from being used as food, followed by famine. People will become desperate enough to eat shoe leather. All fruits will be obsolete from trees, but that will not be enough, so they will also take away the leaves as well as the bark, leaving the tree dead. And finally, a time will arrive when people will stop trusting others around their children, and then Hyrcania will become a ghost of a nation. So they don't have the option of questioning Sonia, as the future of their kingdom depends on her. While in Kitai, Sonia, Hannah, and Scorpio are welcomed by being surrounded by the spears of the guards, called to meet the new king, Jokan. Arriving at the Tiger Room, Sonia and Jokan face each other after months, with the king mocking Sonia to be a thief turning into a beggar. When Sonia accuses him of being a traitor and a murderer of a man who did him no harm, Jokan reminds her that Domo had become an inconvenience for him, so he needed to be killed. Jokan then asks Sonia to beg for help, but Sonia instead asks to bargain, her in return for food supplies for Hyrcania. She reminds Jokan that she is the only one who can reveal the truth to the College of Generals, threatening his reign as a king, but Jokan reminds her that she is already at his mercy. Hannah, sensing their incoming defeat, points out to Jokan that he is the most powerful man in the world currently, but all is owed to Sonia, as she is the one responsible for the death of Emperor Dragon. And for that service, Hannah requests Jokan to reward Sonia by helping her kingdom. Impressed by Hannah's diplomatic words, Jokan decides to help Sonia. Back at Hyrcania, Isolde and Circus try to find a temporary solution for the starving Hyrcanians. Circus reveals his time as a slave in Corinthia, where he suffered through famine for 5 long years. King Philo of Corinthia didn't want to starve anybody, but they had only enough food to feed half the population. Because of this, Philo had proposed a game by calling a grand assembly, and even including the slaves. Handing everyone a numbered token, Philo selected people who received odd number tokens to be fed one day and returned to their work, while the people with even numbered tokens were fed the next day, being dismissed from their duties on the day they didn't get food. Alternating between this, the nation had reached a compromise that kept everyone alive for a while. But Hyrcania's people are not like that of Corinthia, leading to the plan backfiring as the Hyrcanians start bargaining with each other for tokens that can get them food. In Kitai, Jokan fills in Sonia on what happened after her escape from there. With the risk of Sonia returning to Kitai looming over his head, once Jokan was made the new king, he decided to get rid of the College of Generals by beheading all of them. This action did come at the cost of the Kitai soldiers being unprepared. Quoting Hannah's request for reward, Jokan offers Sonia the vacant position of Master of War in return for providing Hyrcania with supplies for 5 years. With Sonia as the Master of War in Kitai, Jokan plans to ruin the remaining Zamoran Empire, pointing out that this will allow Sonia to get revenge on the empire that ruined the lives of her people, while also allowing Jokan to expand his empire. Giving her time to think over the offer, Jokan places Sonia, Hannah and Scorpio at a room in the palace. But if she doesn't accept the offer, then there is no guarantee that the three will get to return to Hyrcania. Sonia wonders about the dilemma, that the only way to save her people from starving to death as a result of a war caused by an empire, she will now have to become a part of the same cycle and inflict the same pain on the people of other kingdoms which she protected her people from. While in Hyrcania, the chaos continues as people misuse the tokens to hoard on the remaining food rations. Isolde asks Circus, how long did this game take before the famine finally ended? Much to her horror, Circus revealed that the famine lasted longer than expected, and once all food ran out, a new game was proposed in Corinthia. King Philo called for another assembly, but this he randomly picked a number. If it was an odd number, then the people with odd number tokens got to eat, while those with even numbered tokens were the ones who were eaten, betraying the dead. Continuing to struggle with her dilemma, Sonia shares her feelings that if she accepts Jokan's offer, then she will be serving the man who once killed her mentor, and if she doesn't, then hundreds will die starving. Unable to betray her morals for the right thing, Sonia curses herself for comparing her own moral high ground over the lives of those she had sworn to protect, making her feel that she should have never become the queen of Hyrcania. She remembers her past, when life was easier for her, when she was free to kill anyone, or even die trying without the fate of nations hanging in her hands. This reminds her of her initial days of fighting under Domo. In one of those instances, she had to fight tribal raiders taking over a bridge. Despite the advice of her counselor, Zoe ran to retreat into the castle because of the raiders' overwhelming numbers. Sonia charged into the battle. She won the fight by cutting off the bridge's support, leading to the death of the raiders by falling into the ravine, but she also ended up with losing 10 of her own soldiers. When Domo questioned her about the casualties they suffered, Sonia revealed that having lost 4 men initially, she didn't want to dishonor their sacrifice by retreating. Domo explained to her that between betraying the living or the dead, always choose the dead, for they usually deal with it better. This memory ended up inspiring Sonia to make the right decision for her people, accepting the offer of being Jokan's master of war while securing food for Hyrcania. With Sonia now on his side, Jokan takes her outside, asking her if she knows what the 3 hands on the flag of Kitai represent. Not knowing the answer, Jokan tells her that the 3 hands represent the 3 sources of power in Kitai: the College of Generals, the Civil Service, aka the eunuchs, and finally the king. But Jokan doesn't agree with this representation, believing the 3, instead of supporting each other, hold each other back. Now, the generals are dead, and the eunuchs are under his control through his loyal advisor, Tortoise. He has created a new flag representing the one hand and the true source of Kitai's power, which is now him, the king. With Jokan taking his leave, Tortoise explains to Sonia about a stone that, when shown at the gates of any city, will help feed her army. They will be forced to comply unless they want to face certain death. Of course, feeding an army means that the city runs out of supplies and will eventually die anyway. Such is the twist of fate. Sonia questions Tortoise if he realizes that Jokan is an amateur man, mad with power, which makes serving him a really bad idea. But Tortoise reminds her that being loyal to Crown, it is his job to make bad ideas work, and now it is her responsibility too. Entering the Hall of Stones, Tortoise recounts how he became a eunuch to Sonia. Growing in the borderland, there was always one war or another, leading to crops being burnt and villages being looted. And for the people, it meant slow death through starvation. And the more painful part of it being that you witness everyone you love die around you too. To save him from death, Tortoise's parents sold him to the army, where he was initially tested on the fields to check if he was suitable to be a soldier. But he was better with a quill than sword, and as fate had it, he was sent to Imperial Academy for education, and where he was also castrated. Tortoise points out to Sonia that at a very young age, he had learnt that while serving an empire, one either cuts or bleeds. Although eventually everyone ends up bleeding, hinting to Sonia that he knows very well what kind of a king he is serving. Later, seeing off Hannah and Scorpio, Sonia gives her a scroll announcing her abdication from the throne of Hyrcania and making Isolde the new queen. Although both Hannah and Scorpio remain upset because of losing Sonia, they are reminded to leave by the night so they can save whatever remains of their nation. Sonia then leaves to attend the banquet held in her honor, where she's officially declared to be the new master of war of Kitai, with a rabbit as her sigil in honor of her fallen friend Domo. But this celebration gets cut short when the tribal raiders reveal themselves and attack everyone present there, targeting Sonia primarily. Using this moment of distraction, one of the raiders disguised as a guard guard tries to kill Sonia himself, but she ends up being saved by another guard who, upon being questioned, reveals himself to be Sonia's old friend Zoran. Children's Crusade. With the people cheering on King Jokan, he assigns Sonia her first mission as the Master of War, which is to conquer and annex the Mountains of Night, a border province of Vendia. When Sonia points out that the land has no strategic values, Jokan reminds her that they need a platform to show that they are still capable of fighting. Despite the mission being easy, there will be prestige for Kitai in defeating the old but one great nation of Vendia. Calling her army unprepared for this mission, Tortoise points out that she has more men added to her army, with this year's recruits having just finished their training. Sonia also takes this moment to Zoran as her bodyguard. Although infuriated when reminded of his treachery to the previous Master of War, Jokan ends up agreeing to let Sonia keep a bodyguard. He then orders Sonia to put together her army as well as supplies, for she will leave for the Mountains of Night the day after the festival of Idra. Tortoise reminds Sonia that in Kitai, as per traditions, only the king is allowed to have bodyguards. Now that she is a part of this society, she should also follow these traditions, for they bind the current social order. As they continue walking, Sonia asks Tortoise about the festival of Idra. He reveals that it is a tradition followed since ages, even before the Order of Three Hands, commemorating the death of King Gordal's favourite daughter, Idra. Entombed inside a wooden cow, she is brought out in the streets by the Templars, where every year the people mourn her death. Wondering how the people can care about the death of a girl they have never met, Tortoise calls this the power of traditions, which binds people together when all other bonds fail. But despite hearing all of this, Sonia couldn't help but wonder, what is the point of so much suffering, of people conquering, and then when someone more powerful arrives, they get conquered instead, to which Zoran answers that it is the only game they have ever known. But reaching the fields of Yun, another shock awaited Sonia when she finds out that her army is filled with not men but children. But the eunuch in charge of them reveals all of the soldiers are at least 12 years old, the age when boys usually get recruited into the army, while girls get enrolled into the concubine academy, even younger. When Sonia asks Zoran for support, he disappointingly reveals that it is true because he was also recruited into the army at the age of 12, when his family failed to provide grains to the empire. Meanwhile, in the countryside beyond Shadizar, Prince Cyril has taken his own journey to avenge the death of his father, sending his soldier Camillus back to Shadizar to inform the Empress Fatmas about it. Despite Prince Cyril's message assuring the Empress to not worry, Camillus hurries back as he knows the dangers that have taken over the countryside after Emperor Dragon's death, and like most children, Cyril has the courage but not the experience to fight against them. Reaching the castle, Camillus is forbidden from meeting the Empress, as the surviving soldiers from the war are dying in hunger and pain they have sustained during the war. While inside the castle, Empress Fatmas continues worrying about her missing son and wondering about his current predicament, with Oricon trying his best to comfort her. But soon she loses patience and decides to get out of the castle to ask the soldiers waiting outside about the whereabouts of her son. But as she finally reaches Camillus, after hearing that a soldier arrived with news about Cyril, she reaches a little too late, as Camillus has already died from the weight, leaving the grieving mother more devastated. In Kitai, Sonia and Zoran wait for the festival of Idra, for when it's over, they have to lead young boys into a futile battle. Angered by the situation, Sonia wonders, how can an empire grieve the loss of a young girl they have never met, while forcefully sending young boys into wars they don't yet comprehend, and turn young girls into concubines? But Zoran tells her that every empire in the end is nothing but children's crusades. He further tells her story behind Idra's festival. It was believed that Princess Idra really enjoyed the sunlight and would come out of the palace greeting people on the streets on a sunny day. Upon her death, the king was so distraught that he was not able to bury her and instead entombed her inside a wooden cow. Once her servants died, statues were made of them near the wooden cow so that they would keep on serving her even in the afterlife. Zoran says that this story is true, but many don't know a different version of the story, a version that was passed from the palace servants to their children for generations. This version was told to Zoran by his mother back when he had one, added to the horror of the king violating Idra in ways that the servants used excuse to not want to describe, and instead of falling ill like what the historians wrote, she actually poisoned herself as a way to escape. When the queen got to know the truth about this, she was shattered and filled with rage, but she couldn't fight against a king. Instead, she chopped the hands of the servant statues so that they might never be able to deliver Idra to the king ever again. With years passing by, the festival of Idra has only grown more popular, with the hope of her getting to enjoy the sunlight, if only briefly, at least once every year. And the mourners gather on the streets to mourn her loss as well as their own, before Idra is sealed inside the temple for another year. The mourners don't know which story is real, but they know their grief feels real, and so they mourn her to honor a god without a name. A battle of honor. Setting camp at the Mountains of Night, Sonia and Zoran walk around the camp as she wonders how she is supposed to lead an army of boys without getting them killed. Sonia questions why there are only few experienced soldiers left, to which Zoran reveals that with most of them having trained under Domo, some left the army. Some of them who stayed got purged by Jokan for disloyalty, while some lost their lives in ill-planned war campaigns. Sonia tells Zoran that if Domo was here, then he would have loved the challenge of leading an army of young boys instead of experienced soldiers. Zoran agrees, especially because of Domo's status as the master of war, but he then tells Sonia that understands why she was Domo's favorite student, because unlike others, she doesn't see war as a game. Sonia then manages to come up with a new strategy, starting with taking control of the fortress at the base of the mountains, which they need to complete before the arrival of the Vendian army. Taking advantage of the young boys in their army, Sonia decides to make Zoran and 3 other boys enter the fortress while pretending to be common tradesmen and his sons. Once night falls, they are supposed to take out the guards near the gate and open it to let the rest of the Kitai army to enter. With the plan going as expected, Sonia easily takes over the castle. The next day, Sonia announces to her army the facts of the upcoming war, with the Vendia army being more experienced, well led, as well as outnumbering the Kitai army. But she also assures the army that with the supplies present in the castle, they can easily wait inside without fighting a war for months until the Vendian army finally gives up. Sonia tells her army that flexibility is important in a war, because sometimes doing exactly what you know can easily get you killed. The news of the castle getting seized soon reaches Vendia to General Holophorus. But when he hears that the army is led by Sonia the Red, he realizes that he is up against a smart general. Soon questioning about the guards of the castle, Holophorus finds out that some of the Vendian guards still manage to save themselves by not being armed and going undercover. Not being large enough in number to seize back the castle, they burn down all the food supplies to weaken the Kitai army, making their plan to stay in the castle for months impossible. In the castle, Sonia gets the Vendian guards locked up and finds out from Zoran that the Vendian army will arrive by the next day. In a moment of vulnerability, Sonia then confesses that despite her life experiences, she couldn't help but feel scared like a little girl, and the next day, when the Vendian army arrives, she will have to send out an army of young boys to fight for survival. Trying to comfort her, Zoran reveals that he was not much older than the young boys in their army when he fought in his first battle. Initially, he was proud to be a soldier and was made to feel welcome, but he soon understood that the good treatment was only a deceit. The young boys, including him, were used as shock troops, an easy sacrifice for the battle, to help the general understand if it was worth the sacrifice of their real, experienced soldiers. Zoran managed to survive by pretending to be dead and hiding underneath the fattest guy he could find, but after so many, he still wondered how the guy got so fat on a diet of crackers and gruel. The ending jokes make the mood lighter for Sonia, and the two embrace in a passionate kiss. The next Holophorus arrives with his army, sending a messenger to request Sonia for a discussion. Meeting near the stone siren, which is located outside the castle, Sonia returns the Vendian men she had arrested, as Holophorus threatens her to surrender with the odds stacked against them due to no food provisions left and an army full of new soldiers. Sonia, explaining that her surrender means the kingdom of Hyrcania will die of starvation, refuses to bow down, as the the battle is officially commenced. Although the Vedyan army will not cross the stone siren as they will be attacked by arrows, while the Kitai army will not be able to stay locked inside the castle for more than 3 days, and with the experienced soldiers needed for shooting arrows, the young recruits will inevitably have to get on the battlefield. 2 days later, with no battle yet taking place, Sonia is cornered into a decision because their food rations are nearing its end. Thinking on her feet, Sonia orders all the soldiers to change clothes, giving the green clothes of the new recruits to the experienced soldiers, while the blue clothes of the experienced are worn by the young recruits. Misleading the Vendian army, Sonia and the experienced soldiers commence their attack, pretending to be novice. She orders her soldiers to not waste time fighting more than it's needed, as their main target is General Holophorus. Charging steadfast towards Holophorus, he throws his pet snake towards Sonia, but it gets sliced into two, and Sonia ends up stabbing Holophorus with her sword. Before his final breath, Sonia assures Holophorus that his honor remains intact, and so are his men. As the army of Kitai celebrate the win, Sonia wonders how the battle of two absent landlords caused a man to lose his life today, while they won nothing but another day of life and hope, knowing well that their end will also come soon enough. The death of innocence. With the news of Sonia's win reaching King Jokan, with immense excitement he decides to pay a visit to Sonia and her army to celebrate the win. But in the castle at the Mountains of Night, the win seems to be just a small one, as another Vendian army marches ahead to fight. With the old army still on their way back, there is a chance of the two armies meeting and exchanging information. This forces Sonia to come up with a plan to attack the new army before they can meet with the retreating ones and learn about the Kitai army's strategies. Realizing the risk the new reinforcement can pose against the new recruits who barely know how to hold a sword, Sonia decides to attack them by surprise alongside Zoran and a few of their experienced soldiers. During this time, King Jokan and Tortoise are on their carriage, being taken to the castle at the Mountains of Night. Tortoise wonders, while devoting himself completely to the services of the crown, he has ended up thinking of Jokan as his own son, hoping for it to result in something good, but now he wonders if it is true at all. As they move through the Vulpine Pass, Tortoise asks Jokan if he remembers the last time they had passed through it. Jokan perfectly remembers the time when he was nothing but a little boy, running away from his kingdom after the death of his uncle and then king, Torkan. Leaving behind no heir for the throne, Jokan's father and his brothers started fighting among each other for the throne, while Jokan and his brothers were being hunted down by assassins one by one. When the two assassins were about to behead Jokan, Tortoise intervened with his smarts to save the young boy. Manipulating the assassins, Tortoise offers them the option of letting them flee to Vendia, which no one will find out. But if Jokan's father won the throne, then assassins would be punished for their actions. Letting Jokan go would give them 2 chances of survival, and if Jokan's father managed to win the throne, then they would make a valuable friendship with the king. But as Jokan finished telling the incident, instead of being grateful to Tortoise for his smarts when his own father couldn't save him, Jokan instead frames it as Tortoise's loyal service to the future king. This deeply upsets Tortoise, who says that he was not the future king, but just a little boy in need of help. But Jokan says that he will eventually die one day, and thus wants his victories to be remembered well. As they reach the castle, Jokan is shocked to find out that Sonia has allowed the surviving army to retreat instead of ending them, as it only makes him appear as a weak king. As his ego takes control of him, Jokan decides to command the new recruits to finish the retreating army. Meanwhile, in Hyrcania, more and more people die of starvation, with no hope left as they exhaust their food supplies. Isolde decides to announce the end of the Hyrcania nation, allowing the surviving families to leave and find themselves a new place to live, possibly where they won't starve to death. Back in Vendia, the new army is ambushed by Sonia and her soldiers, killing their general with arrows and taking out the soldiers. When Zoran asks Sonia if they should finish off the retreating army, she refuses, as they are nothing but pawns in a game just like them, being used by their king. If they survive, then at least they will live to tell the story of their defeat. But despite her best efforts to protect as many lives as possible, Sonia is shocked upon returning to the castle, as he finds out Jokan has taken away the new recruits to fight against the retreating army. As Jokan and his army of young soldiers march towards the retreating army camp, Tortoise questions if he needs to fight, as the retreating Vendian army are already defeated, while their own soldiers are nothing but young boys. But Jokhan instead retorts by saying that no boy is too young to fight in a battle, and he had learnt young that the world runs on blood. Sonia and Zoran ride to Jokhan in hopes of stopping him before he commits a stupid act, but upon reaching the camp, all they see are the dead bodies of young boys and defeated soldiers lying around them. Calling the bloodbath to be a victory, Sonia gets infuriated at Jokhan and punches him to the ground. Jokhan threatens Sonia that one more move from her will lead to Hyrcania to be erased by starvation. But as he screams to Tortoise for help, Tortoise tells Sonia to end Jokhan as quickly as possible, upset that the monster Jokhan ended up becoming. Sonia stabs Jokhan in his chest as Tortoise holds him in his arms in the final moments, apologizing to King Jokhan and then to the young boy who he saw as his own child. As all the bodies are piled on top of each other, including Jokhan's for burning, Tortoise grieves his hopes of seeing Jokhan becoming a good king, which ended up costing so many lives unnecessarily in the battlefield. And as Jokhan's body is burnt, so does the promise of his life burn in the embers of fire of Jokhan's own fear and Tortoise's failure to raise him right. Sonia questions Tortoise about what will happen next, as he reveals that he will return to Kitai to inform about the brave death the king had in the battlefield alongside his men. And then he and the other eunuchs will run the nation of Kitai from now on the best way possible, without the fear of future leadership that will be produced by some king's balls. When Sonia asks about Hyrcania's future, Tortoise assures her that they will be supplied with plenty, with more food than they can possibly eat. As for Sonia, the death of her king means that she is relieved of her duties as the master of war. Before Tortoise can leave, Sonia asks him why he had turned against the king he swore to protect, to which Tortoise reveals that protecting Jokhan could have cost him the whole world. When Sonia names this to be unexpected compassion, Tortoise corrects her and calls it math. In Hyrcania, as Isolde is about to make the announcement of dissolving Hyrcania as a nation, Hannah and Scorpio arrive with wagon loads of grains for the people. Isolde welcomes her back home, to which Hannah replies that she is happy that there is at least a home left to come back to. Meanwhile, Sonia and Zoran enjoy a moment of peace in private. Sonia asks if he has ever thought of a life outside the army, to which he says that he never considered to be living. This prompts Sonia to ask Zoran to come with her to Hyrcania, to which he gladly agrees. Author of all misfortune, Sonia the Red and her love, as well as bodyguard, Zoran returns to Hyrcania with Sonia resuming her duties as the queen. As they share a loving moment, Sonia is unable to believe her luck that she finally has some happiness to look forward to. But returning to her duties, she asks Zoran for a favor to accompany Hannah to Shadizar with a message, as they still technically remain in war against Shadizar. Zoran agrees to her request, but Sonia wonders if she is being a fool by sending Zoran to the castle of her enemies, but Zoran assures her that she is not being a fool, but a queen. With Hannah and Zoran away, Sonia starts taking part in her day-to-day duties as a queen, starting with patrolling the bandits in Hyrcania with the help of Scorpio, a member of the Brothers of Misfortune, who were a group bandits until Sonia ascended the throne. Later, sitting in the throne room, Sonia listens to the worries of her people one by one, such as helping the chicken merchants to help sell their chickens, due to them mostly being left with small chickens after the death of the good ones during starvation. She puts out an order that the buyers will pick a chicken from a sack, and whichever one they choose, they will have to pay for it, without any option of exchanging or bargaining the price. But Sonia finds the piece to be boring with circus, reminding her that this piece is exactly what she fought so hard for. With bandits under control, people's problems solved, and food continuing to come from Kitai, Sonia wonders what to do next. Coming to the decision that farmers and soldiers help in the making of a nation, but it is stories that make a civilization, deciding to hold a night of stories for all the Hyrcanians. Meanwhile in Shadizar, Hannah and Zoran arrive in front of Empress Fatmos, but she doesn't seem to think of herself as one. With half the empire barely under their control and the other half openly revolting, she doesn't know if they even have an empire anymore. Fatmos asks for the reason for Hannah's visit, calling her a Hyrcanian, but Hannah corrects her by saying that she actually is from Koth, another kingdom under the control of the Zamoran Empire. Hearing this, Fatmos asks how many apologies she owes them, but Hannah instead calls them the victims of the same plague, which was Emperor Dragon, pointing to Hyrcania being the land of deception and thievery. story, Hyrcanians are also quick to forgive their enemies. Hannah presents Fatmos with the gifts Sonia has sent for them, crates full of grains for the starving capital of Shadizar, in hopes that it will lead to peace between the Empire and Hyrcania. But right then arrives the Lost Prince and the new Emperor of the Zamoran Empire, Cyril, with new friends by his side. Reunited with his mother, who thought that he had died, Cyril reminds her that it is not his time to die yet, as he needs to avenge his late father. Using his authority as the new emperor, Cyril orders for the guards to arrest Hannah, Zoran, Oricon, and even his mother, Fatmos. Back in Hyrcania, Isolde introduces Caspar, the poet who is also an old and wise storyteller, to Sonia, to narrate stories for the night. As everyone gathers around to enjoy the night, Sonia wonders if it is too early to relax and hear stories. But Isolde tells her that they are not just stories, but a reminder of how good life can be if only we allow it to be. Caspar then starts the tale of King Julius of Argos and the death of the luckiest man in the world. King Julius was not called the luckiest man in the world because he was born a king, but because if he bought an orchard, it was sure to have an exceptionally large harvest. But once he sold it to someone else, the orchard would face heavy damage. When King Julius's friend, King Florian of Zingara, arrived in his kingdom to discuss an alliance, Julius boasted of his good luck. But Florin, shaken by this confession, warned Julius that someday his luck would run out and he would suffer great misfortune, so it was better that he caused his own misfortune than wait for the gods to do it. Troubled by this warning, Julius decided to get rid of his most prized possession, his signet ring, and threw it into the sea. But as Julius settled into some peace, a shocking incident happened. A cook found the signet ring inside a fish he was about to cook, which seemingly indicated that the gods threw his misfortune back at him. When King Florin heard of this story, he assumed that the gods must have some terrible misfortune planned for Julius and decided to end their alliance. Troubled by King Florin's actions, King Julius assumed that he must have ended the alliance because he knew Argos was about to be attacked. He decided to form a large fleet which his nobles were against, a first time that they were against the king's decision, but faced with the accusation of treason, they agreed to it and ended up emptying the treasury. When the attack didn't happen, King Julius's nobles and people turned against him, thinking that they went crazy. But Julius instead thought of them to be the misfortune gods had planned for him. Under the guise of a new mission, King Julius gathered at the men he had thought of as a threat and ordered them to set sail to Zingara with a sealed message for King Florin. But with their trust over King Julius already broken, they opened the message to find that Julius had ordered for their execution to Florin, and they decided to sail back to Argos. With King Julius' paranoia getting worse every day, the nobles had no choice but to rebel against him, which ended up with them killing the luckiest man who ever lived. Ending the story, Caspar reveals the moral hidden behind it, that gods may grant good luck, but mortals are the author of all misfortunes. While hearing the tale, Sonia is called upon by Circus to meet the messenger from Charizard. The messenger, Sir Fitzhugh, reveals that Emperor Cyril has ascended the throne, and recalling Sonia's gift to Emperor Dragon, which contained a warning, Emperor Cyril wishes to return the kindness. Sonia opens the box while Sir Fitzhugh reveals further that Cyril has taken an oath to avenge his father's death. Her messenger, Hannah, is being held captive in Shadizar, and he wants Sonia to die at his hands. As Sir Fitzhugh takes his leave, Sonia breaks down on the floor with the gift in Cyril's box, revealing to be Zoran's severed head. Haunted by the past, lighting fire to Zoran's body and burying his head in the ground, Sonia wonders if love is just a curse for her, especially after losing everyone she has ever loved. Getting on a horse in the darkness of the night, Sonia rides ahead in her path to Shadizar, making Isolde the Queen Regent once again. But this time, this decision may just last longer. As Sonia passes through the forest, she remembers the time when she was a child, running away from Hyrcania through the same road on the back of a cart, hoping to never return there again as she moves towards Shadizar. Sonia tells herself that she should have never become a queen, because to reign means to lie to yourself that bloodshed is only a temporary measure, forgetting that the people she loses will haunt her forever. To rule is to focus on protecting the outside while ignoring the ghosts haunting her within, and she has never been able to outrun them. Meanwhile, in the castle of Shadizar, young Emperor Cyril has locked his mother in the dungeon. As he orders orders Fitzhugh to assemble his soldiers, he berates them for resting like helpless people, eating the last of their grains while the Empire is under the threat of rebels and traitors. But Cyril intends to put an end to that. As he orders the soldiers to form rank, Fitzhugh points out that many of them are wounded and maimed, to the point that they cannot even lift a sword, making Cyril order the soldiers who are unfit to fight to throw down their swords. He orders the rest who are still willing to fight to kill the soldiers who just unarmed themselves. When they don't immediately follow suit, Cyril gives them the threat of killing their families. As walks away from the chaos, Cyril tells Fitzhugh that leadership is only a question about motivation. If you want people to fight for you, then you give them a reason to fight. Later, reuniting with his pet, Kump, a talking boar, Cyril tells him to prepare for a new adventure the next day. Arriving in Shadizar that night, Sonia wanders around the street as she remembers the many memories that Shadizar had given her. The first time she learnt to draw a sword, and the first time she learned to fall in love, feeling glad that her life will end in Shadizar. But she also remembers her old friend Jovan, who along with Sonia used to break into the treasury to steal gold after they heard of a secret path from a man whom Jovan's mother was taking care of. But as they kept on going back again and again to steal, they were caught one night because of Sonia. Unable to endanger his mother, Jovan requested Sonia to kill him, which Sonia ended up granting, but she feels shame in facing Jovan's mother and informing her of the death of her son. Unable to face the guilt, she had walked away from Shadizar as if she was never a part of the city. The next day, Emperor Cyril and his soldiers arrive at the Aquilonian border to seek his revenge against Minas, the man who betrayed his father, but Fitzhugh tells him to first find out how much strength Aquilonia has before taking an action. Ordering the Therapim, Cyril questions them about how many units of soldiers Aquilonia holds, but when the heads give their usual vague answer, he burns off one of the heads. In fear of their life, the rest of the three reveal that they have 6 units, making Fitzhugh realize that the number of Zamoran soldiers are far less. As a result, Cyril decides to carry out raids in Aquilonia along with 50 of his men and the talking boar, Kump, with multiple raids carried out in different towns of Aquilonia. The news of it soon reaches King Minas, but seeing Cyril to be nothing but a bratty 12-year-old, he doesn't bother much about it. Back in Zamoran camp, Fitzhugh questions Cyril about his end goal from the raids. When Cyril realizes that Fitzhugh is underestimating him, he reveals what happened during his time away from Scheherazade. Cyril was locked away in the Tower of Uyghur Nomadine by the sorcerers, where spent 30 years in the Dreamland, learning about the arts of cruelty and even earning the magical power of suffocating people to death with his mind. But he also learnt to be patient, something his father had failed to learn. With a long list of towns raided, Minas finally decides to confront Cyril and order his son to form an army and double the production of weapons. But he soon hears a shocking news that the multiple raids has resulted in the death of every blacksmith in Aquilonia. With everything going according to his plans, Cyril finally reveals them to Fitzhugh, planning to attack Aquilonia once they are left with no weapons but pitchforks and wheelbarrows. Cyril then questions Fitzhugh if Sonia has accepted his offer to Shadizar. Once he finds out that she has, Cyril realizes that he cannot leave Sonia waiting for too long. This is quite true, as Sonia is searching for Cyril in Scheherazade, hoping that if they die together, then maybe both their countries can have a fresh start. But as continues roaming the streets in the dead of the night, she comes across 2 soldiers having a conversation. Hiding herself underneath a cloak, the soldiers have a chat about making less money guarding the streets than before, and noticing Sonia, they hope to make some extra. When the 2 of them stop Sonia, asking her to pay a fine of 2 silver coins for being out so late, but Sonia instead gives them 2 gold coins. Getting greedy by seeing gold and hoping that Sonia has more, they decide to attack her, but before they can make a move, Sonia attacks them with her sword and kills them. With more soldiers noticing her actions, Sonia is left with no option but to run away. Reaching the castle, Sonia tries to find the secret route to the treasury, which she used to take with Jovan. Upon finding the route, she enters the secret path to make her escape, but as she reaches the treasury, she lights up the room with a fire torch to find it filled with statues of her late enemy, Dragon. The Curse of Power. Inside the Imperial dungeons of Shadizar, Hannah and Oricon, who have been locked up side by side, have a conversation with each other. Hannah asks Oricon why they have been locked up, making Oricon point out that Cyril probably wants to get information from them before executing. But Hannah questions what kind of information does Cyril expect from her, to which Oricon replies that he hopes to find out about Sonya's weaknesses from her, or perhaps find out if she is the weakness. When Hannah asks about Oricon, he confides that Cyril just wants to kill him, and unlike most people who see life as a precious gift, not realizing that it's just a small amount thrown by the gods like a counterfeit coin thrown to a beggar, so he is more than satisfied to leave it all behind. While outside on the streets, Sonia the Red fights against more soldiers. As the horn is blown to signal morning, Sonia realizes that it's time for her to hide again, but more soldiers arrive with a net to catch her, but unlike their ideas, they don't work fast on their feet and end up getting killed. Noticing the palace flag rising, Sonia understands that Emperor Cyril is back in Shadizar, returning to hiding. She decides to pay a visit to Cyril at night. Meanwhile, inside the palace, the news of Sonia being given the name Angel of Death for killing the night guards reaches Clavorus, the commander of Shadizar, in the absence of Prince Cyril. But much to the shock of those present in the court, Cyril returns to his throne and reveals that the Angel of Death is none other than Sonia the Red, who has been invited to Shadizar by him. Hearing that other soldiers are fearing to go out for night patrol, Cyril orders Clavorus to flood the streets with more soldiers. But before that, Cyril orders them to be offered a giant feast for their loyal services. But the food will be poisoned, and only the men who return from the night patrol will be offered the antidote as a means to motivate them for fighting. Later that night, Cyril questions the Therapium if the guards will be able to capture Sonia or not, but hearing another unclear answer, he burns one of the heads. The Therapium then answers that Sonia will not be present in the market, but rather will come to Cyril at night, satisfying his anger. When Kump questions Cyril about burning the Therapium heads, Cyril points out that 4 reliable answers are better than 100 unreliable ones. As they walk, Cyril recalls his harrowing 3 days being locked inside the Tower of Wigua Nomadine, which had felt like decades to him, but that besides his new powers and patience, he had learnt a very important lesson, that what doesn't kill you helps you get better at killing. Revealing to Kump the family of guardian giants, Helma and Freddy, who has been located right behind the throne room. Saying her goodbyes to a picture of Dragon, Sonia gets out of the treasury and makes her way to the castle, while killing only soldiers that pose her too big of a threat, while sparing as many lives as possible. Arriving at the court with Cyril sitting on his throne, Sonia gets attacked again by executioners and also finds a trapdoor set up underneath the rug. Mocking Sonia for thinking that she's too smart to not be in real danger, Cyril questions what her final words will be. Instead, Sonia tells Cyril about his father, Dragon's final words, that how the curse of power never ends, but those who suffer from that curse usually do. As she says the final like, Sonia throws her sword to attack, but is shocked to see it being stopped as the guardian giants step in front of Cyril to protect him. Freddy picks up Sonia with his hands as Cyril savors the moment which he has dreamt about for a while, telling Freddy that he intends to talk to Sonia more, so to start by only peeling off her limb or two. The Angel of Death. In the Imperial dungeons, Hannah gets bored of being locked up for so long and hopes for her execution to arrive sooner than later. Hearing a new prisoner reveals that he is scared of dying as Oricon asks him why he is imprisoned. The man reveals that he and his love, the Bird Overlord, were imprisoned during one of Emperor Cyril's travels. The Bird Overlord's powers allow her to communicate with every living thing that can fly, and they follow her orders without any question, but that is exactly why he is imprisoned, so that the Bird Overlord can do Cyril's bidding without any resistance. He of course can hope for the Angel of Death to come to him and free both him and the Bird Overlord from this painful situation, but he can't help but feel afraid. As a means to soothe the man's fears, Orkin reveals that as per the Lord, when they meet the Angel of Death in their final, it will be the second time that they meet her, for she was also present during their birth. The Angel of Death is actually responsible for choosing the souls for reincarnation. As she selects one, she takes them over the Elysiums, where the gods reward the souls for great deeds, followed by Tartari, where the souls are punished for their offenses, and finally to the soul's destination, where it's placed inside a newborn child inside a mother's womb, from where it will be reborn. Although this usually upsets the soul as it wants to return to the warmth of the spirit realm, but that is exactly why babies enter the mortal world screaming as the child starts its first breath, kicking and scratching, a struggle that never ends up stopping, blurring the lines between living and fighting. Meanwhile, back in the Imperial Court, the guardian giant, Helma, struggles to keep holding Sonia, pointing her out to be slippery, while Cyril orders them to not crush her. But Sonia manages to free herself by biting Helma's hand and then kicking her on the face. As she manages to injure the guardian giants, Cyril finally loses his patience and reveals his glowing green eyes as it empties the air out of Sonia, suffocating her. But Sonia gets up to run away by distracting Cyril with a mace and breaks a palace window to escape, fortunately weakening the hold of Cyril's powers over her. As Sonia hides in the treasury once again, she is watched by a bird, who soon informs the bird overlord of Sonia's location. Back in the dungeon, Oricon continues his story of death, how it is believed to be a gift because it puts a time limit on their regrets. But unlike most people, he cannot die, but rather he will be crushed under the weight of his own failures. Not knowing when the angel of death will arrive, the only way to be prepared is to always be ready for her arrival, but only few ever are. Most people like to think that the angel of death comes out of vengeance, but in reality she comes out of pity. As Hannah questions how Oricon knows so much, he calls it an advantage of being blind as he takes out a vial of potion hidden in the eye socket. Using the potion, Oricon burns himself and everything around him as Hannah wakes the guards from sleep. Oricon, now a body of living fire, attacks the guards while apologizing to them, and then tells Hannah to use this opportunity to make her escape from the dungeon. Walking through Dragon's paintings and statues, Sonia realizes that the treasury has become a monument of both her and Dragon's failures. Sonia remembers Jovan finding the exact spot where she had killed him, as she tells herself that there was no other option she had but to grant his request of being killed. But her moment of guilt needs to wait, as Cyril enters the treasury through the main door and attacks her with soldiers and berserkers. With the fight turning into chaos, Cyril orders for all of it to stop and explains to Sonia that there is no point in continuing to fight, as he has more men prepared who will keep on attacking her. But for some bizarre reason, if he even runs out of men, then they will just lock Sonia inside the treasury with her hidden route already sealed. She has no way of escaping. Cyril points to a painting of Dragon and tells Sonia that right in front of his father's eyes, he will avenge the death of Dragon sooner or later, meaning that the treasury will be the place where she dies. But he is hoping for her to die later, as he enjoys torturing her. Ruined by life. Inside the palace of Shadinar, Emperor Cyril's mother, Fatmos, recalls the teachings by the Lord of Fools. She wonders how as a child she dedicated her life to the Lord, who taught her about the futility of all human actions. But now imprisoned by her only child, while the one man she has ever loved in her life waits for death, everyone will say that she chose the right path, but if nothing matters at all, then she wonders why she still looks out the window in search of some hope. As she remembers the day of Cyril's birth and his naming, which was suggested by Oricon after her father, Emperor Cyril arrives in Fatmos's room to greet her. Fatmos questions why he locked her up, which Cyril explains to be a period of forced mourning after the death of her husband. Frustrated by Cyril's actions and him calling Dragon his father, Fatmos finally reveals that Dragon is not his father, but Oricon is, who is now rotting in the dungeon. Although the news doesn't seem to shock Cyril, as he reveals that he could have executed Oricon so that the secret of his lineage dies with him, but he is sentimental enough to spare him. When Fatmos asks what happened to him, Cyril reveals that he saw the world and it changed him. Even though he is not related to Dragon by blood, he still sees him as his true father because he understood the true nature of the world. Continuing his story, Cyril reveals that Phantoms is not the only one being held captive in the palace, but also the bird's overlord, who once was about to kill him, but now she is under his control because he managed to survive. Making the point that you either kill the enemy when you have the chance, or you end up rotting in a tower. In the dungeon, Oricon gives Hannah the keys to the tower to help Fatmas escape and regain control of the kingdom. When Hannah asks if he is not coming, Oricon reveals that he doesn't ever want Fatmas to see him in this new appearance of burned skin. Entering the palace by mistakenly opening the wrong door, Hannah reunites the bird overlord with her love, who is also courting Hannah. Meanwhile, inside the treasury, Sonia continues to fight Cyril's warriors one after the other, nearing exhaustion. Initially mocking Cyril for losing his best fighters so uselessly, but then reaching a point where her right arm is broken and she is nearing her end. As she keeps on fighting, Sonia wonders why she keeps on fighting unless she expects to live, knowing well enough that this may be her end. As Cyril wants to live, he decides to finally finish Sonia by himself, dragging her by putting a leash on her neck and wishing that Dragan could be there to see her end. But much to his surprise, this is not the day of his win, as Sonia pulls a chain from one Dragan's statue, managing to escape as the statue of his father falls on the back of Emperor Cyril. With the warriors prepared to take out Sonia for possibly killing their emperor once again, the bird overlord arrives just on time to attack the warriors, while also using two birds to poke Cyril's eyes out in case he does live for another day, as Kump tell them to stop, for he is just a boy. In the Imperial Hospice, Empress Fatmos orders for both Cyril and Sonia to be taken care of nicely. Meeting Hannah, Fatmos promises her that once Sonia gets better, both of them will be sent back to Hyrcania as friends of Zamora. When Hannah questions her nice behavior, even after Sonia almost killed her son, Fatmos reveals that she used to take solace in the fact that Cyril not being Dragan's blood means that he will be spared from evil. But she has now realized that good and evil are not something that can be inherited. Instead, everyone gets ruined by life one day or another. She points out that a king or a queen is not the true enemy of the world, but rather it is the throne, as we notice that outside Shadinar, Oricon takes his leave. A new life. With her son, Cyril still in recovery, Empress Fatmos asks the physician if he will ever get to see again. The physician, unsure if he will even wake up, tells her that if he wakes up, then his eyes will never see the world again. Meanwhile, Sonia is back on her 2 feet with a healed hand, and despite the physician's advice of resting a bit more, she asks Fatmos to let her leave now. The next day, Fatmos lets Sonia know that all the arrangements for her and Hannah's travel to Hyrcania have been made along with escorts for their protection, and she also presents Kump to Sonia as a gift. But Sonia reveals that she is not returning to Hyrcania, as she is nothing but a target, and the only way to keep her people protected is to stay away from them. Taking Fatma's permission, she decides to embark on a new mission. Crossing the Gate of Triumph, Hannah and Sonia finally say their goodbyes. Hannah tries to make Sonia understand that Hyrcania needs her leadership, but she reminds Hannah that Hyrcania already has one in the form of Isolde. Sonia relinquishes her throne to Isolde, saying that Isolde has more experience ruling the people, as well as the experience of being a Hyrcanian herself. She further says that the people have Circus to keep them honest, and Hannah to make the kingdom appear good to the rest of the world, which is the hardest job of all. Hugging each other one last time, Sonia rides away on her horse, with Kump following her on foot. With darkness dawning on them, Sonia and Kump make camp in the forest, as she wonders that ever since she was a child, she has been followed by a trail of blood, and there is no way of knowing who might be following that trail and someday catch up to her. Kump warns Sonia that he may just run away when she falls away, but she doesn't try to stop him while being scared of the darkness. Kump ends up staying with Sonia. That night, Sonia dreams of her final moments with Domo before he gets killed. She again requests Domo to run away with her, but unlike what happened in the past, Domo sits on a chair as he points out to Sonia that his death is inevitable, but asks what they should do in that situation. Sonia answers by saying that they make their deaths worthy of history, but Domo instead says no, saying that they make history worthy of them. Sonia wakes up to not understand if the interaction was just a dream or an actual memory. As Sonia and Kump continue their journey, they pass through the land of the undead, who tries to attack them, but gets easily defeated by her. As they continue, they move past a man calling to them, but they ignore his request and eventually reach another forest where they set camp for the night. Noticing that Sonia is making multiple campfires, Kump asks her why. Sonia points out that the man they had met earlier was not a farmer, especially with no farmland around. Rather, he was a bandit who may try to attack them at night. This turns out to be true, as a group of bandits following the man from earlier arrive near Sonia's Sonia's location, but noticing multiple campfires, they get fooled into thinking that she is not alone, and instead leave without attacking her. The next day, they finally reach their destination, the Tower of Wigur Nomadine. Going inside with a large bearing on her shoulder, opening it in front of the sorcerers to reveal a sleeping Prince Cyril, blind, just like his actual father. Sonia questions if they recognize the boy, as she sensed their magic in him, but the sorcerers instead question Sonia's relation to him. Hearing that the boy killed the man Sonia loved, the sorcerers believe that she brought Cyril there for revenge, as a way of making him suffer in eternal pain. But instead, Sonia reveals that wants the opposite of it. She wants them to make him dream of a life which both Cyril and Sonia herself never got to live. Initially refusing to help her, once Sonia reveals that Cyril's happy life doesn't need to be governed by the rules of their world, the sorcerers agree to it as payment for all the misery Sonia has created in their world, which the sorcerers got to harvest. Leaving Cyril inside the tower, Sonia and Kump take their leave, as Kump says goodbye to Cyril one last time. Back in Hyrcania, Hannah finally reaches the kingdom and informs Isolde and Circus about Sonia abdicating the throne and making Isolde the new queen of Hyrcania. Circus tries to come up with ideas to find Sonia, but Isolde stops him, saying they owe it to her as she once fought to protect them. The only gift, albeit a poor one, they can give to Sonia in repayment for her help is to let her live on her own terms. Inside the Tower of Wigur Nomadine, the sorcerers decide how to give Cyril a happy life. Thinking of using the memory of the parents he had killed the last time he was in the tower, they decide against it, as Cyril may realize that he is dreaming. Instead, the sorcerers decide to use Sonia's memories to create a happy dream for Cyril. In the dream, Cyril wakes up from his sleep in a camp with Sonia and Zoran as his parents. Cyril tells them that he dreamt of being an emperor, but Zoran instead mocks her a bit and then goes on to prepare food for him. As Cyril gets out of the tent, he gets to see his brothers, as well as Domo and Dragan, playing chess with each other. As Sonia continues riding, she wonders if the biggest obstacle to creating a new world is their own inability to accept how good it can be, and the need for people to ruin it just to leave their mark on history. Kump asks Sonia where they will be heading next, accepting that he wants to stay by her side as a companion she can have intelligent conversations with, if not anything else. Sonia then tells him they will head to wherever the wind will take them, searching for Red Sonja. 10 years after Sonia abdicated the throne of Hyrcania, the kingdom has now taken the shape of a proper civilization under the rule of Queen Isolde. With constructions of new roads underway, an older Isolde orders for it to be finished by the next winter, and in case of her death, to be completed without her. When Kentaro, one of her nobles and a future ruler of Hyrcania, stops her from talking about her death, she reminds him that a leader cannot afford to lie, at least not to herself. Returning to their council room, Isolde asks Kentaro if he has made preparations for his brothers of misfortune to protect the roads, but Kentaro says that what more they can need other than swords and horses. While another noble and another the future co-ruler of Hyrcania, Tristine points out they need to directly attack the smugglers to be prepared. But Isolde remains disappointed with both of their approaches, realizing that she doesn't have much time left to teach them. Instead, Isolde sends them on a new mission to find the former queen Sonia the Red so that she can meet her one last time, and also maybe in turn this can help Tristine and Kentaro learn from the best possible person. Meanwhile in Khorasun, the pearl of the Turan Empire, Sonia the Red enjoys a fun game of strip rummy with a group of bandits in a bar. As the men continue to lose, they request Sonia to let them wear their clothes, revealing that they are employed by a warlord who will reprimand them by cutting their throats for this behavior. Soon, the warlord makes his entry in the bar, ordering his men to attack Sonia for burning down his looted grains, and also for stabbing him in the neck. Despite multiple men attacking Sonia at the same time, she doesn't face any problem in defeating them. Once the fight ends, the warlord realizes that she is none other than Sonia the Red, asking for his forgiveness for attacking her. Initially trying to get her attention with gold, the warlord soon reveals that the Sultan of Kimuchi is holding a battle between warriors of different kingdoms, offering them an expensive prize along with the title of the greatest warrior of this age. Sonia, interested after hearing about the glory she will receive, demands the warlord takes her to the battle arena. Tristine and Kentaro sail the ship to follow Sonia's trail as they discuss if she will live up to the legends they have heard growing up. Kentaro, somewhat in doubt about it, says more than writings in scrolls, he trusts Isolde's words, but every time she narrates the story about Sonia, the legend just keeps on extending. As they reach Korosan, Kentaro questions Tristine if they are at the right place or not, to which Tristine replies that Isolde has been keeping track of Sonia ever since she left. Last, Sonia was spotted visiting bars and brothels up and down the coast as a way of helping the people. Shocking Kentaro. The duo end up in a bar in Mikolet in search of Sonia, where they learn about the Great Games hosted by the Sultan of Kimuchi, and a patron tells that she may be attending it. But on their way out, because of his clumsiness with his drink, Kentaro ends up getting into a brawl with other bar patrons but manages to win against them. Although this makes them lose Sonia just by a few minutes as she leaves behind the warlord to enter the arena. Inside the arena, Sonia watches as the warriors from different kingdoms get introduced with Kentaro representing Hyrcania. As Kentaro's battle starts, Tristine recognizes Sonia and notices Kentaro losing the battle while a kraken appears from a hidden trapdoor, making her request to Sonia to rescue him. When Sonia refuses, Tristine reveals that they were sent to find her under the orders of Queen Isolde of Hyrcania, convincing Sonia to rescue Kentaro. Learning how to survive. As Kentaro fights against the warrior named Scorpion of Kitai, he easily wins the battle by breaking Scorpion's weapon. But Kentaro's win is short-lived as the large kraken drags him by his foot but manages to escape. As Kentaro accepts his defeat, Tristine shouts at him that she has found Sonia the Red, who jumps into the arena and then on the kraken's tentacle while attacking it with her sword. As Kentaro enjoys the spectacle of Sonia's fighting skills, he is ambushed by a warrior named the White Giant. Despite Tristine's warning, Kentaro barely manages to escape as Sonia defeats the White Giant with her sword. As he gets up to thank Sonia for her help, Sonia kicks Kentaro in the face, calling him weak and asking if he is just a messenger. Kentaro reveals that he is the Minister of War of Hyrcania. Meanwhile, the Sultan, upon realizing that Red Sonja is not just a legend, but a real warrior, orders his men to convince Sonia to meet him by promising her all the luxuries possible. As Sonia, Kentaro, and Tristine finally get together, the messenger arrives with the request of the Sultan wanting to meet Sonia, but she is only convinced after he promises her stronger ale. As the Sultan welcomes Sonia, she asks him about the prize promised to the winner of the battle. The Sultan calls it a gold crown made by the finest Shemish artisan, encrusted with Stygian rubies and Nemedian emeralds. But Sonia reveals that she is more interested in all the slaves that the Sultan has working for him. But their conversation is cut short by the arrival of the warlord who got Sonia to the arena, and a young lad laying claim to Kentaro, in turn claiming their prize. But Sonia retorts by saying that she will only be claimed by men who are capable of defeating her in battle, a request granted by the Sultan, and in turn making the warlord and the young boy participants in the battle. 3 hours later, a drunk Sonia is carried into their room by Tristine and Kentaro. Placing Sonia on the bed and taking a look at the view from their room, Tristine recalls the legends she has heard of her, how she was just a young girl during Hyrcanian's war against the Zamoran Empire, and how Sonia daringly defeated the evil Emperor Dragon. But her words end up falling into deaf ears as Tristan points out to her that Sonia has fallen asleep. The next morning, as Kentaro wakes up to check the sunny view from the balcony, he notices Sonia climbing up the walls of the palace. Sonia reveals that she left to check the crown that was promised to them as a prize, but she was not able to because the crown is heavily guarded. Noticing that Kentaro's has no scars or scratches, she questions if he has ever fought in battle, to which Kentaro points out that he did fight in a battle yesterday. Laughing at his reply, Sonia tells Kentaro to wake up Tristan because she has a task for her. Returning to the battle arena, Sonia and Kentaro fight against not one, but all of their opponents, along with a tiger. As the Sultan watches them fight, he is informed about Sonia and Kentaro's background. Using this information, he orders for the King of Tehran to be informed about Hyrcania being helpless without its Minister of War and champion warrior. As they start fighting, Sonia advises Kentaro to not stop moving and stay away from the tiger. When Kentaro reveals that he was not expecting her teachings to be so obvious, Sonia reveals that survival instinct is not something that can be taught. Kentaro finally shows his skill of attacking, while Tristine arrives to meet the Sultan. Tristine points to the battle being unfair due to it being 2 against 10 warriors, but the Sultan calls it a plan of the other warriors to be able to defeat Sonia. The Sultan then asks Tristine what she knows about Sonia, to which she reveals that Sonia is someone who came from nothing, and what little she had was taken away from her, along with her reputation of being the doom of corrupt and powerful men. Pointing to the high-rank positions of Kentaro and Sonia, as well as Tristine, who is the Minister of Peace, the Sultan questions why all of them are visiting their festival. Tristine, feeling worried, still shows the pride of Hyrcania through the warriors they have birthed, saying that enemies will enter Hyrcania at their own risk. She reveals that instead of enemies, they are looking to make friends who can help in the creation of a better Hyrcania, especially now that they have roads, commerce, and even schools. But the Sultan refuses to by emphasizing on Hyrcanians' reputation of being thieves. Tristine reveals that they are not interested in the Sultan's money, but his slaves, men who created the Sultan's palace in the middle of a desert, and yet are kept under chains. Putting Sonia and Kentaro's win at stake, Tristine requests for the slaves to be their prize for the win. As the conversation continues, Sonia and Kentaro take down their opponents together, with Sonia managing to defeat the tiger too, impressing the Sultan with their skills. Returning to their room, Tristine is overjoyed by the successful negotiation that has taken place with the Sultan, also giving credit to Sonia and Kentaro for the show of their power. But Sonia tells them that the Sultan will never part with his slaves because they are his prized possessions, as Tristine tries to convince Sonia otherwise. Sonia finally realizes why Isolde had sent the two of them, because Tristine believes that her words are enough to win over everything, while Kentaro believes in fighting everything with his sword, even though he is not very good at it. Sonia points out to them that without each other's skills, both of them will not survive for long. Sonia goes on to say that they need to be more careful while dealing with liars, when Tristine questions how she is so sure. Sonia reveals that the Sultan will keep them busy with negotiations while gaining glory for his arena, and once he is done, he will find a way to execute them. Sonia tells them that blood will be spilled soon, but for now, she needs them to continue talking with the Sultan. Throwing them out of the room while she enjoys an oil massage, Sonia tells them to attend the Sultan's feast. As Kentaro and Tristine are shocked by the glorious feast and the arrangements, Sonia enjoys her oil massage while making conversation with the slave. The enjoyment gets cut short when Sonia notices the slave trying to kill her with a poisoned needle and restrains him with her arm. Understanding that he is only looking out for himself, being forced to take the Sultan's orders, Sonia reveals her intention of wanting to free all the slaves, but then asks the man to answer all her questions if he wants to continue being alive. Kentaro and Tristine, meanwhile, are on their way back from the feast as they are suddenly attacked by an assassin who carries Tristan away. Being too drunk to fight, Kentaro fails to fight properly, only to be saved in nick of time by Sonia. Sonia scolds Kentaro for drinking too much, not realizing that it is not the right time, and advising that as a general with the responsibility of protecting Hyrcania, he needs to know the difference between when it's appropriate to drink and when he needs to be careful. They return to their room with the slave from earlier, waiting for them as he tells them that he has gathered all their belongings and it is time for them to leave, as the Sultan will make more attempts to take their lives. Power is an illusion. With his assassin killed and slave along with Sonia, Tristine and Kentaro missing, the Sultan orders his servant in anger to find. Disappointed at losing Sonia, who the crowds in the arena are expecting, as well as of his treacherous slave, who owes him for his clothes and food, the Sultan is pacified by his advisor, who tells him that the slave was most probably killed by Sonia. In the arena, Kentaro holds the announcer hostage with a knife at his throat as he announces the arrival of the she-devil, Sonia. With the announcer then killed, Sonia shows off that she has stolen the crown that was promised as a prize, and also reveals the truth of the Sultan being a cheater and liar to the audience, revealing further that he tried to get her killed so that he can keep his prized possession while also profiting off of the money that the innocent audience paid him. Escaping the arena, Sonia and Kentaro run towards the shipping dock and away from the soldiers sent after them, while Tristine tries to negotiate a boat for them. But failing to negotiate, Tristan throws the owner into the sea and takes the boat for herself, as Sonia and Kenator manage to find horses to come aboard. Noticing the trio making their escape on the ship, the Sultan orders his soldiers to prepare his fastest ship to capture Sonia before she can reach Hyrcania. On the ship, Tristan pukes into the sea, while Kentaro tries his best to catch fish, but fails. Teaching Tristan about the bait, Sonia cuts his arm with the hook and throws it into water, as she notices the Sultan following them into Sonia's bait. On the Sultan's ship, the slaves who had been hiding aboard after finding out Sonia's plan approach the soldiers and collect their weapon, with the excuse of the Sultan's order of sharpening the weapons for battle. Collecting all the weapons, the slaves hide themselves in the cabin and lock the door by putting furniture in front of it. As he notices Sonia coming towards them, the Sultan orders his soldiers to be prepared. But unfortunately for him, his slaves, who he believed owed him for their survival, ended up betraying. As Sonia comes aboard their ship, she gives two choices to the soldier, either to run away on the emergency boat or to get killed. Not making any moves, Sonia sticks to her promise and kills some of the soldiers, scaring the others into running away. With no one left to defend him, Sonia throws his precious crown to him, calling him a fool for valuing shiny objects over the lives of others. As the evening dawns upon them, Sonia, Tristan and Kentaro celebrate the freedom of the slaves while the Sultan sits in a corner. When one of the slaves offers him a glass of wine, he mocks him for offering his own wine to him, but the slave points out that he has never been paid even a copper coin for his work, meaning that the Sultan actually owed them and not the other way around. Meanwhile, Sonia asks Tristan what she has learned on her first mission beyond the boundaries of Hyrcania. Tristan reveals that she noticed how Sonia plays the game, not letting anyone gauge her next move and how she can be patient, but when she grows tired of the game, she ends it all together. Sonia points out that men like the Sultan lack imagination, as they get used to being protected, served and obeyed, that they form blind spots around them. Sonia also tells Tristan that if she wants to represent Hyrcania to the world, then she will have to learn the rules of others' game, but never be blinded by the truth that power of the rulers is nothing but an illusion. It evaporates the moment one stops believing that it exists. The next morning, Sonia wakes the Sultan to kick him off the ship, taking him on a boat to a nearby stranded land. But as he walks to the land, almost drowning in the water of the sea, he warns Sonia that the Hyrcania she will be returning to will not be the same one, that he has already informed the king of Turan about the absence of the Hyrcanian general, as well as their best diplomat and their champion fighter. With the old Queen Isolde left unguarded, Hyrcania will be defeated, and the Sultan will sleep peacefully, dreaming about Sonia's worst nightmare coming true. In Hyrcania, Isolde notices that they have been surrounded by the Turanian army from all sides, and releases the crows of last resort to signal the people of their incoming enemies. As the Hyrcanians prepare to protect themselves by closing the gates of their land, the enemy marches towards them. Goodbye, child. As the Turanian army arrives in front of the gate of Hyrcania, only the old Queen Isolde stands in front of them. With the soldiers threatening to kill her, Isolde requests them to let her talk to their leader first. With one of the soldiers guiding, Isolde arrives in the tent of King Xandar of Turania. Isolde questions if this is his first conquest, to which he reveals that he has been on several conquests alongside his father. Isolde reminds him that Hyrcania is known as the land responsible for the end of many empires, but Xandar tells her that he has been informed about the absence of Sonia the Red, along with their Minister of War and Minister of Peace. Xandar lets her know that arrangements have been made by him for their execution, and with the Hyrcania Queen in his captivity, he has one left to fear but the goat herders. In the dock, Sonia, Tristan and Kentaro arrive in Hyrcania along with the freed slaves. As they decide their next plan of action, one of Isolde's crows land in the hands of Tristan with a black ribbon, meaning that the enemies have arrived near the gates of Hyrcania. With Sonia emphasizing on their urgency to reach Hyrcania, the trio move towards a nearby village in hopes of securing horses. The men at the village welcome them as they are made aware of the enemy. One of the villagers point out that King Xandar's father is well known for conquering cities, and Xandar will be just as desperate to prove himself worthy of his father's legacy. The other villager tells Tristan to send the crow to Khorbul and lets them know that their forces need to circle around and reach the capital from the east. Wondering about the right bait to misguide the Turanian army, both the villager and Tristan decide on Sonia being the bait. Inside Xandar's camp, He tells Isolde that the walls of Hyrcania will be breached by tomorrow, with half their men killed and women assaulted. The other option that Zadar gives her is to open the gates of Hyrcania, pledge their loyalty to him, and he will stop his soldiers from having their way with the married Hyrcanian women, and let the Hyrcanian men join the Turanian army. But with Isolde not giving in to his demand, Zadar cuts off one of her fingers to show that he is not joking, but means business. As the Turanian army continue their effort to open the gates of Hyrcania, Zadar grows impatient, while Isolde tells her that he still has time to retreat his army. But thinking about how his first conquest will be written in history, Zadar refuses to bow down, while Isolde reminds him that he has the option of signing a treaty instead. As Zadar tells Isolde that he will make sure that history remembers him as a great conqueror, one of Isolde's crows arrives to deliver her the message about the arrival of Sonia the Red, who will take his head. Looking back, Zadar notices Sonia waiting on a horse and orders his army to kill Sonia first, hoping to be the one who finally gets the title of Slayer of Sonia. But as he remains occupied in his thoughts, Isolde makes her escape from the tent. Swearing to kill Isolde later, Zadar notices his efforts have gone to vain, as soldiers from Hyrcania and Korbul all come together to attack him and his forces. As he gets on the ground to avoid them, he notices the message sent to Isolde by the crow, which was to make the fools chase her, realizing that he has been manipulated. Soon Zadar is arrested by the soldiers and taken to the Hyrcanian camp to sign a treaty. Tristan tells Zadar about their demand for a loan for the growth of Hyrcania, which they will pay back with interest. But when Zadar tells her that he will first have it checked by his lawyers, Isolde lets him know that he has no option but to agree. Meanwhile, near the docks, Sonia outran the soldiers following her and waited on a ship, enjoying ale. But soon she notices the soldiers not retreating and approaches them to ask about it. The soldiers hope to capture Sonia in return for the freedom of their king, but Sonia gives a last chance to retreat. With the soldiers not backing out, Sonia decides to fight them without the help of her sword, as she stops their attacks and throws them from the cliff. With a majority of them dead, some of the soldiers flee while the remaining are taken back to Hyrcania. Sonia arrives inside the tent to find Zadar negotiating how the war will be written in scrolls, with him deciding to not conquer, but rather sign a treaty after seeing an investment opportunity. Isolde then gets her revenge by cutting one of Zadar's fingers, telling him to write in the scrolls that he lost it in the battle. Sonia takes Zadar outside to be sent back to Turan, advising him to not lead his army in battle, and instead spend his time to become divine through other pursuits, such as painting or long walks in the garden. With the enemy now gone, Sonia presents Isolde with the freed slaves, introducing them as the finest artisans and teachers from the Sultan's employ. All the Hyrcanians, old and new, gather around a bonfire to celebrate their win by drinking ale, singing and dancing. Sonia listens to the songs created following her legends, but she decides to create a new one for the amazing efforts of Tristan and Kentaro, leading Hyrcania to another win. As the celebration goes on, Sonia assures Isolde that the Minister of War and Minister of Peace are all grown up, prepared to take over Hyrcania. As Isolde talks about not wanting to remain a queen forever, Sonia agrees with her, remembering the way she has seen Hyrcania change, from when she was a child leaving the kingdom to when she became a queen, ruling bandits and thieves, to how it is now, a real nation. Isolde and Sonia then continue to celebrate together by hugging each other in happiness and then by dancing and singing together. The next day, as Sonia prepares to take her leave, she reminds Kentaro and Tristan to get Isolde's hands checked. When Tristan asks her to stay, to see her home grow, Sonia tells her that her home was burned down long ago, and the longer she stays, the more she gets reminded of those memories, but promising to return if they ever need her. Sonia then tells the two to keep an eye on Isolde for how dangerous she can be, reminding them that she chopped off the finger of a king. Kissing her forehead, Isolde thanks Sonia for everything she has done for them, while reminding her that she will always be a daughter of the land of Hyrcania, acknowledging that Sonia has given her enough peace that she can die happily. As Sonia rides away on her horse, Tristan tells Isolde that Sonia is nothing like how she was described in the legend. Rather, she is flawed but with a heart of courage. As Tristan tells Isolde that it is time for getting her hand checked, Isolde bids her farewell, declaring the land to be hers now, and ends up dying in Tristan's arm as Sonja moves forward and away from Hyrcania. Marvelous verdict. With an amazing story and colourful art, Red Sonja reaches a new height of grand storytelling, giving us a full story with an epilogue. This run of Red Sonja is grounded in exploring the emotions of its titular character. With a past she wants to run from, and a future she doesn't know of yet, Sonja's life gets muddled by her past coming back to haunt her. But this time, instead of escaping, she makes peace with it and fights the aftermath of her actions head-on. With complex villains like Dragan the Emperor and his son, Emperor Cyril, along with a fascinating group of supporting characters, the world of Red Sonja continues to shock the readers with its capabilities.